You are watching Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Iowa football at the voice of college football. We're set to be joined by former Iowa coach Don Patterson here in minutes. We've got a plethora of people who are waiting to chat about the loss today, 27-14. The Iowa Hawkeyes losing at home to Michigan Wolverines for the second straight year. We're not at home for the second straight year, but losing by double figures to this Michigan team, which is a good Michigan offense. We're going to talk about it, but we talked in the pregame about Iowa. The need to fire a shot early, run something that you haven't showed on tape. I didn't really see Iowa do that unless you want to count the fake kneel at the end of the first half. And what happened is you basically your defense actually struggled to kind of get going early, which you've seen the Iowa defense take some time to get settled in. But when you have no margin for error due to a completely inept offense, that's a recipe for disaster. You fall down 20-0. Third quarter, Iowa's offense looked a little bit better. I don't know how much you attribute that to improvement, or is it just a matter of, garbage time? And I get the game wasn't completely over at that time, but I would like to think, not being a play calling expert, that Michigan was certainly comfortable with Iowa moving the football down the field. And they kind of went into the bend, don't break mode that we're accustomed to seeing Iowa play, and allowed Iowa to get on the board with a short field, make it 20-7. Iowa drove the ball, had a 4th and 2 that you convert there and score a touchdown. You're at least within a score. Not a ton of time left on the clock, but would have had a shot. And it was for naught. They give up a late touchdown and then score a late touchdown, and that all adds up to a 27-14 loss. So we will have Coach Patterson here on the show with us soon. But first, before we get to Coach Patterson, let's start with Hawkeye Stan. Hawkeye Stan, how you doing, buddy? You were the first one on here this afternoon. Are you mad, indifferent?
I had to drink 6 Monsters to watch this game.
You sure you don't? You sure you want to be here and not in a hospital?
Yes. It was horrible. What are we doing? I mean, did you only an Iowa broadcast? Only an Iowa broadcast on Fox would have the quiz question be, who has more punts this game? That's Iowa. It's a laughing stock. It was a joke. It was a joke. And then the fact that Iowa wins their games if we punt 6 times or more. That's why we lost. We only punted 5 times.
I think it was 8 times or more.
Oh, even then, it's just I'm I knew going in. I have a couple of Michigan fans, and I knew going in we were going to lose this game. And Iowa got manhandled that first drive. Watching that D line get pushed back the way it did, but they recovered. They recovered nicely. I thought it's just
as you expected them to. You expected Parker to make some adjustments, and look, I mean, the 7 points were late on a short field, like a 30-yard field. I'm not going to count that last touchdown. Unfortunately, it will go down in the stats. But I mean, giving up 20 to 27 against this Michigan offense, that's a winning number for most. That's what you want to do if you're a defense.
This was
really
an
explosive offense.
It was a winnable game. That's, I think, the thing that breaks our hearts is all of these. We've only lost 2 games. We're going to lose a lot more, but all of these games have been winnable. All of them. And it breaks my heart to see a defense this good. They're good, Torrey should be Heisman candidate, I think. Just put him in there. Anyway, great show. Excited to see the other call-ins and have Don talk me down.
Talk you down off the ledge?
I probably already jumped, if we're being honest, but
Well, you better hang tight because Illinois is beating Wisconsin by like 30 right now.
Oh, we're going to lose still. I went down our list. What game on the list are we going to win?
Well,
what game?
Let's pump the brakes on losing to Illinois. I still think Iowa has a good shot of beating Illinois next week.
Who's the coach?
Wisconsin game.
Who's the coach of Illinois?
Bielema.
When was the last time we lost to Nebraska? Who is that to?
To Nebraska?
Yeah, wasn't that Pelini?
It was Pelini coach team.
Yeah, Pelini.
They've lost to Nebraska under Riley.
No, you're right. But Bielema knows Iowa football, and I mean, it's not hard to beat us. All we got to do is put 8 in the box, give Petrus just a little bit of pressure, and watch it all unfold. And it's an easy formula. After a while, the over the middle was wide open, and you notice they started putting Reganey down and doing the shallow mesh routes, and we started getting completions there. But I mean, it took us 3 quarters to figure that out, and it doesn't bode well.
Anyway,
I'll let you go. I could rant forever.
No, you're good. I appreciate the call, Hawkeye Stan, and stick with us because Coach Patterson. I got a lot of questions for Coach Patterson. I know our listeners have a lot of questions for Coach B as well. All right, we move along to Jackson. Jackson, how are you, sir?
How we doing, boss?
Well, I'm all right. I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, I don't think many of us expected a win today, but
it's heartbreaking.
Regardless,
it's definitely heartbreaking. I mean, again, same thing with the Iowa State game. They do it to us. It's almost. I asked the question during the game. I'm like, why do they feel like they need to give us hope near the end of the game when we know how it's going to end? And I've had this question for the past couple of weeks. It's kind of like, and I get the coordinator group is a very close group, and the leader and the player leadership very close with everybody. But as a defensive leader and Phil Parker as a coordinator, you feel like you kind of have to speak up. You have a top 5 defense and a bottom 10 offense is what it feels like. You just feel like you got to step up and stand up for your guys. And I get, it's football and that happens. And seems to be a trend the past couple of years. But, what do you do when you're in that spot? We see it this week. We played, I feel like, as good as we could have did on defense. Like you said, the late touchdown, I'm not going to count it. 20 points against a top Big Ten offense. And, it's hard to see us only score 14. But one more thing to add is I'm very anti-Petrus, but I feel like at the beginning of the game he struggled. But, when we take those shots and he makes a couple of good passes, you see that confidence go up. And I get we're hurt, without Keegan. And Reganey's been kind of spotty every once in a while. And Laporta seems to be our only reliable option. But, like you said, touch on it. Early shots, I feel like, is what could be the key to this offense. And I feel like sometimes we're just not aggressive enough. And
I completely agree with you on that. Now, part of the reason they're probably not aggressive is what we saw there at the end. Now, I will add this. People who are complaining about the O-line, it was not good. I get that. But when you can tee off on the quarterback when you're down 2 or 3 scores late in the game, I mean,
yeah, they're going to send pressure in that, situation.
yeah,
And
but hold on. Let's keep this in mind though, Jackson. Let's keep in mind that I have to watch that last series where basically Iowa got sacked 4 times. I don't think it counted as 4 sacks, but if you watch that back, I don't believe any of those sacks came on blitzes. Now I could be wrong. Maybe they did, but I know Colby just got beat a couple of times.
he just got burned.
And yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's necessarily a matter of numbers. I think, well, there's most certainly still major issues along that offensive line. And it's just funny because I get these messages throughout the game from friends and people who listen to the show, and they'll say, well, our line can't block. And then somebody else will say, well, why are we still playing Spencer? Or why is Brian Ferentz employed? Or, the game has outlived Kirk. So nobody's on the same page about what the problem is. And I'll say the same thing I said at the end of last year. That's because there are so many problems. It's not just one problem.
Exactly. We have a young O-line group there. And, we're going to develop. I mean, I see it with Caleb Johnson, especially, and Keegan and Arlen being so young. I mean, the next couple of years is very bright, and it sucks that we're kind of, for lack of a better term, wasting that potential. But, I mean, honestly, not a lot of people expected us to come in. Not a lot of people and win. Not a lot of people expected us to come in and compete like we did. Blake Corum had, everyone last week he had record-breaking yards, I believe, against Maryland. And, I mean, he had a lot of positive plays, but we played a lot of bend, don't break, it seemed like, and it worked. Unfortunately, we couldn't cause turnovers, and we couldn't really get to JJ enough. But, I think we played good overall, especially towards the end of the game. I mean, it's kind of disappointing to get shut out in the first half, but I think we have a bright future ahead of us. And whether that's with Brian leading, I get he's very inconsistent, and who knows who our quarterback's going to be next year. But I think we have a bright future. And I feel like, as an Iowa faithful, I mean, I live in California. I've lived in California for 80% of my life, and I'm still the only Hawkeye fan that seems to be out here. And I still tune in every week and make sure. And it sucks to watch sometimes, but, you can't help but think, the future looks very bright for us.
No, I appreciate your positivity. I just want to respond to Mr. CEO who's in the chat, who doesn't understand anything about football. Iowa's D-line is also non-existent. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Did not watch the Rutgers game very clearly.
Well, he also has no idea what he's talking about because he doesn't understand the concept of time of possession. When when your defense is on the field the entire game because your offense can't move the ball. Now, granted, the defense got better in the second half, and part of that is because Iowa's offense started to move the ball in the third quarter for whatever reason. But to make a dumb comment like this means you literally know nothing about football. But I go ahead, Jackson. I had to sound off on that.
No, you're fine. But yeah, I feel like, all the negativity is very, especially this season, early on in the season, is very, well warranted. But I feel like, everyone maybe take a step back and look at the whole picture. The next couple of years, I think, is very bright with our young core, young quarterbacks coming in, Padilla, Labus, Lanes, Carson May, another 4-star recruit committed a couple weeks ago at quarterback. Like, we're going to have options, and it's just how we can use them. We have a good position coaches and coordinators.
Jackson, how are we going to use them?
Yeah.
Have confidence in the coaching staff to use the guys they have coming in effectively? I don't.
I do not, especially with how we've kind of handled Padilla. And I mean, I hate to say it, but I was talking to my dad about it. I was like, someone's going to transfer. Someone's got to transfer out of that quarterback room.
Sure.
And I'm worried it's going to be Padilla. I've always been high on Padilla, even after last year when he was kind of 50-50. But, happened with Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones kind of realized the direction we were going. So the Tyrone Tracy, and look how that's worked out for him. So it's got to look enticing for somebody to be like, well, that's the direction we're going to go, and look how it worked out for Charlie. It's kind of scary, but defensively,
that's the reality of when you pair an offense that does not highlight skill position players, you pair that with NIL, and you pair that with the transfer portal and the one-time transfer rule, and basically it's an anytime transfer rule because guys can get exemptions about whenever they want for whatever reason, yeah, it is a concern, and that's not going to get any better.
Yeah, and I hope in the future, we have this NIL collective works out that I've heard a lot about, and hopefully that's a good thing for us. But also, a big thing is looking into the transfer portal ourselves and looking for somebody. Even if we develop low-ranked guys. It's kind of what we're known for. We get these 3 stars, and they come in, and all of a sudden they're beast all in 2 years or whatever it is. So if we can get wherever skill positions, O-line, wherever we can get these transfers in, I feel like, we won't be unstoppable, but we'll definitely be better, and the outlook would be better. I think it's just, I think one thing I will say against Brian is I think it's kind of a red flag that, our main recruiter is LeVar Woods and Liddell Betts. When it comes to offense, it seems like, why can't it be Brian and an offensive coordinator? And I don't know. I think that's kind of worrying.
I agree, sir.
Thank you so much, man. Long time listener, first time calling it. Well, answering. I've been in line for a long time, but I get impatient sometimes. But appreciate the show. Love watching it. Looking forward to having Coach on and watching everything and seeing what you guys have to say. You guys are a real inspiration, to me at least, because I want to be a future sports broadcaster and analyst. So appreciate you guys, and thanks for listening to my little tangent, if you will.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Jackson. And we got plenty of room in the call line. So if anybody wants to call in, the phone line is tied up right now. We got somebody on hold there, but we have unlimited amount of room in our StreamYard room. So if you're on hold, just hang tight. We'll get to your call. Let's get to Ryan, who is joining us again. Ryan, how you doing today?
Well, Corey, not great. I assume you're not either. I got a lot of notes written down. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thanks. Regarding the first caller, why are these games all winnable? Well, it's because, I'm sorry, Kirk will not adjust to offensive philosophy. Why are all his OCs basically have sucked? Couple exceptions under the O'Keefe years and 2020 under Brian, I would maybe argue, but not to this level, but it's always been bad. Kirk has nothing to lose except winnable games. We should be able to not ride the back of our defense each and every week to, pitch either a shutout or 10 points, whatever. We should be able to allow 24 to 27 points against a good team and be right in there at the end. I doubt Maryland is that much better than Iowa historically or this year on a whole. They got 27 in the big house, and we got, 14 with garbage time help. I will give the referees a ton of credit in this game. I thought they did a phenomenal job making sure Michigan covered. Well, come on,
Yeah, and I see Ray's comment in the chat here. Not saying the refs cost Iowa the game, they sure as blank didn't help. Atrocious officiating, Patriots overthrowing receivers, but he did play better as the game went on. Again, some of that is when Michigan's sitting back in that zone in the second half, you're up 20-0. I'm not saying that Petras still made some makeable plays. I give him credit. He made a nice throw to Luke Lachey, which I thought was actually off his back foot. But no, you're right. The one that bugged me, and I can't really speak to the offensive pass interference or the other ones, but the chop block was terrible, obviously, the cut block. But the other one was the pancake block by Logan Jones. I don't understand. What game are we playing now? Is this no longer football where an offensive lineman can't take down a defensive lineman? What game are we playing if that's not a clean play in football? So
sometimes they think we should be more like golf, where you just help guide the guy down to the field, just make sure his knee hits or something, and be a gentleman about it. I mean, that play was 10, 15 yards behind the play, had zero impact in the game. Granted, Logan should have just pushed him, but maybe he would have been flagged for being rude. Who the hell knows the way these officials were.
Yeah.
You know.
I hear you.
Now, next point. We can't run the ball against good defenses right now without establishing some kind of a pass first. I don't know how many games we have watched Iowa have a passing game that came somewhat to life when the game was more or less out of reach. You know, you look at Spencer's pass line and it's going to look good. I mean, God, I got to tell you, I can't remember the last time we had a quarterback throw for 246 yards. I mean, but, you know, Lachey looked amazing. He really, really looks like he's a major piece in this offense, and he should be. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a really good tight end for us if we get a quarterback. So Spencer's pass line was okay, especially when Michigan went soft. But our offensive line really sucks right now. I'm sorry. It's horrible. And that being said, Spencer holds on to the ball way too long. That first play in the second half, if you had below average mobility, he could have taken 2 steps over. The guy would have overrun Spencer. He just barreled right into him, and Spencer had a little bit of time to make a decision. Either I'm going to move my legs a little bit like a competent Big Ten quarterback, or I'm going to throw this thing away. And yet he just tucked it and took a 9-yard loss. It was just so defeatist, you know. Play calling wise, again, you only see a little bit of pulse if the game's already out of line. I mean, stop running into a brick wall. They had some stretch play success. You got to go to that. And for the love of God, newsflash, Arlen Bruce is on the team and he can get you chunks of yards, but you got to kind of scheme for him. But, you know, all that said, Corey, and I know you blasted me, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago when I said this, I am convinced Brian Ferentz is going to be assistant head coach by the end of November, maybe early December, because Kirk will double, triple down on bad. Obviously, as I said earlier this week, he scanned the world far and wide to fix this offense, and that's what he came up with. Last thing I'm going to say is for the Michigan fans like Mike Fort and some others that are probably going to call in, take your little smirk back to heaven so we can vent in hell.
Ryan, you're free to call back when Don comes on.
Oh, it depends if you take my call after that.
You're good. Appreciate the call, Ryan, as always.
Thank you.
All right. I get it's lively, folks. Please do me a favor before we continue. And we got callers waiting. Please do me a favor. Just if you're in YouTube right now, scroll down, hit that little thumbs up button. That would help immensely. I know you don't think it's a big deal. It is. Please hit the like button. And if you're new to the show or you've watched before and you've never bothered, please subscribe. That does help as well. And I want to acknowledge a couple super chats here. Lemansky says, Corey and Coach Don, thanks for doing these post games. Corey, you and I talked about 7 and 5, and we are headed that way. Bryce, thank you, Lemansky, for the super chat. Bryce, at the end, why were we going for it on 4th and 22? Well, you could lose the game either way, Bryce. I don't really have an explanation for you. It's either that or punt and lose the game probably 20-7. Iowa ended up getting the ball back and getting a late garbage touchdown. All right. And then I like this username. I'll hang this one around for Coach Patterson when he gets here. Don Patterson's biggest fan. Appreciate the super chat. Says, just got power back and I'm here. # pray for Southwest Florida. Boy, what's happened down there has kept things in perspective. Certainly hearts go out to everybody down there. I got a lot of family on the east side of Florida and they're all safe, thankfully, but just unbelievable what the devastation that Fort Myers has dealt with, and just can happen so quickly. And certainly our hearts go out to everybody affected by Hurricane, is it Ian? I always forget the names of the hurricanes, but boy, you can't get a more straight on hit than what that hurricane did to Floridans. And again, our hearts go out to him. Let's go to our caller who's been on hold here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Brian from Arkansas, Corey. I've
Hey, Brian.
called before.
Yeah.
Hey, love the show. Thank you for having the show.
Absolutely.
First thing first is, if we would have took the third quarter and put it in the first quarter, maybe we could have done a lot better. And what I mean by that is, the third quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter, we were opening things up. You know you're playing Michigan. You know you're playing a top 10 team. Why not come into the game opening things up?
Well,
why would you wait till the third quarter to do it?
Well, this is going to be a good topic for Coach Patterson when he gets here, and he is on his way to a place where he can log in and join us. But again, without looking back, and I wasn't paying attention to really what Michigan was doing defensively and how they changed things up. I'd like to think, though, that Michigan softened their coverage and played Iowa's bend, don't break type of scheme in that third quarter that allowed Iowa to move the ball downfield, because you're up 20-0. And they effectively play. I'm just saying, I don't know that the Iowa could have done that in the first quarter. I think that might have been more so a result of how Michigan was playing Iowa.
We could at least try.
I get it. No, you got to throw they got to throw the ball downfield more. You're absolutely right about it. I don't understand that at all. But the problem is, at some time, in obvious passing situations, they don't know how to throw the ball downfield because they don't have pass protection. And that's why I've been after him for so long. And I asked Brian Ferentz this question several weeks ago. Why are we not taking advantage of waste downs? And exactly. I don't ever get a good answer.
He doesn't have one.
I don't understand why we're running the ball on 2nd and 1. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Those are the only times where I feel comfortable going play action, where I feel like Spencer's got a good chance of having time down the field. And that's what he does best, is throw the football down the field.
Yep, you're exactly right. And I agree with you, Corey. This I hate to down the caller called in to say that our future looks bright. It doesn't look bright to me because of the fact that we don't use the recruiting like we should. We sure didn't use the portal like we should. I mean, this problem goes a lot deeper than what the fans and what the coaches will admit. This problem, this is not a easy fix problem, because we've got coaches that can't recruit, and we sure got coaches that don't know how to use the portal.
I agree. I'll say this, just a prediction. I think they're going to be forced to use the portal this coming offseason. I think they will, because I don't think they're if I'm wrong again, I'm wrong again. But I know.
And hopefully they'll know how to use it.
I know.
Because they're going to have to use it, Corey. They're just going to have to.
Well, I can tell you this. Their players are going to use it. There are going to be players for Iowa that use it.
Yeah, you're not kidding there. You're not kidding there. Yeah, the players will definitely use it for Iowa. But it just, and then the officiating, we can go over that till next week. I mean, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
It was pretty bad. But that at the end of the game, the 4 sacks in a row, that was pathetic. Absolutely pathetic.
It was. But again, they're teeing off on Spencer. I don't know how many men they were bringing, but Spencer, it's a multi-level problem, because we know this, but Spencer has no ability to make a guy miss when he gets through. The play's over.
No.
So it's not just Spencer, but it's a combination of offensive line play, quarterback play, lack of mobility at the quarterback position, and the fact that you're in that situation in the first place. So I agree. It was brutal, painful to watch.
Well, I mean, they had one player that had 2 of the 4 sacks.
I know, but that's very reminiscent of the 2019 Michigan game and the 2019 Penn State game. Very reminiscent, except Iowa actually had a tough quarterback in 2019. No offense to Spencer Petras, but I'm going to say this: Nate Stanley was a tough tough guy at quarterback, and they don't have that this year. And they haven't
Thank
had
you,
it since
Corey.
2019.
They sure did. I'll let other calls call. I appreciate the show, Corey.
Appreciate it, sir. Thanks for the call. Yeah, great stuff. And I understand the frustration. And as this show is always intended to do, this first hour or so, we're kind of letting people vent. And I have no problem with that at all. We're going to have Coach Patterson on for some breakdown here in a little bit. But feel free to get it all out. I have no problem letting you all vent. And maybe Drill MVP will help us to calm down. Drill MVP, we've had some people wondering where you've been, sir.
Yeah, I saw that. Today wasn't a good day for Kentucky football either. I'm not sure if you saw the score of that game.
No, I saw they were behind. I haven't seen the final.
Kentucky lost 22-19. I'm very sympathetic to the people who say Spencer holds on to the ball too long, because Will Levis, final play of the game, held on to the ball too long, got it strip sacked, fumbled, recovered by Ole Miss at the 5-yard line.
Okay, but Drill MVP, please don't insult Will Levis. No offense, that kid's a player and you know it.
Oh, he's a great player. He is one of the top 3 quarterbacks in all of college football right now. I'm going to say that, but he's not perfect. He does make some mistakes, and that is one of the mistakes he makes, is he holds onto the ball just slightly too long, and it costs him. But yeah, I want to bring some optimism, some hope for the Iowa Hawkeye Nation. I know this was a tough game, but most people didn't expect Iowa to beat Michigan. If you look at their division they're currently in, it is not a difficult division at all. Iowa could still be tied in first place even after today if Northwestern loses to Penn State. So everything Iowa wants is in front of them.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't know. I'm not even thinking about the division. Frankly, from an Iowa perspective, this is just me, Drill MVP. I'm not even thinking about the division, because I don't think it's realistic to even think we're going to have a say in who wins the division in 2 months. I really don't.
Well, if the goal is 8-4, 9-3 for this year, I think most people thought Iowa would take a step back. Wisconsin doesn't look as nearly as good as that we thought they would. Nebraska's awful. Northwestern lost to an FCS school. So those are 3 games they should win. Illinois slightly improved, but I don't know how talented they are.
I mean, they beat down on Wisconsin today.
Yeah, I know. That was shocking. So I think what is Iowa? 2-3 or 2-2, 3-2, something like that.
3-2. I mean, 1-1 in the Big Ten. But you're right. I mean, technically the race for the West is not over. But I guess my only point is I just don't see when I look at Iowa now through the lens of this offense and quarterback play and protection, I don't see them doing any better than 7-5. I just don't at this point. And 7-5 ain't gonna win the division. So I don't know if it's gonna be Purdue. I know Wisconsin's down. Illinois is better. Heck, I still think Purdue's gonna have a say. I think people were writing them off because they went on the road and lost at Syracuse and struggled against FAU. Those games make no difference at the Big Ten Conference. Imagine if they had beaten Penn State, and you could argue they should have. I still think that Purdue team is gonna have a say. And you want to guess who was the leading receiver for Purdue again today? Charlie Jones. No surprise there. But they will have a say, and I think Minnesota will have a say. I didn't get to watch the Purdue Minnesota game, but all I saw was the final score, and Purdue beat them comfortably. So it's a weird division. I know people want to say that the division's down. I think you could argue that, certainly, but I also think it's just collectively maybe a bit better, with Illinois better. But it's probably down overall. But I've been saying for a while, Illinois has looked pretty good all year, Drill MVP. If you've watched them, they look decent. They had that one loss to Indiana, but boy, they could easily be undefeated right now.
Oh, absolutely. Illinois has looked like the most consistent team in the division, which is something I did not think I would say up to this point, but here we are. Outside of Illinois and Minnesota, I don't see any team that has that's been consistent. Every team has been up and down, and I think Iowa beats Wisconsin right now. I think they beat Northwestern. I think they beat Nebraska. So that's 3 wins. You're 6-6 at worst. So you're most likely going to make a bowl game at a minimum. So I don't think it's 5-7, as some people are saying.
I think it's 6-6, 7-5 is reasonable. If you get to 8-4, I'll be really surprised, because I don't know where those 8 wins are going to come from. Maybe you're right. Maybe you still won against Wisconsin at home, but I think 7-5 is at this point reasonable.
See, I wouldn't even call it a steal at this point just because of how bad Wisconsin's been. I mean, they're like Iowa, except they don't have a defense.
They lost to a good Washington State team at home and a really good Ohio State team. So today, I don't watch today's game, but I would like to think that Wisconsin will still have a say. I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but I think they'll still have a say in a month from now. I just think that team is too well coached. I'm guessing. I mean, I haven't looked up and down their depth chart recently, but that's still a fairly veteran team with veteran pieces. I would like to think they'll figure it out to a point. That game's not going to be a walkover in Iowa City. Iowa can't score points against Michigan's defense and Wisconsin's defense. I know they've given up points today against Illinois. Without watching that game, I can't say what exactly happened there, but I'd like to think that Wisconsin's defense will stay in every game just like Iowa's.
Okay, so next week they've got Illinois on the road. Is this a must-win game for Iowa?
Must win for what? The division or?
Reasonable expectations, 7-5, 6-6.
Oh yeah, reasonable expectations. It's a must win. Yeah, they got to win the winnable games. The winnable games heading into the season, the ultra winnable games from people's perspectives in the Big Ten was Rutgers, Northwestern, Illinois, and Nebraska. Those are your 4 wins that you absolutely should have. And then you're thinking, okay, we should be able to beat somebody between Purdue, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and then can you steal one against Michigan or Ohio State? So yeah, it's a must-win game from that perspective.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think most people out after the first 2 games in the Big Ten expected Iowa to be 1-1. They're right where they should be. I think the offense is a major concern. I don't think people saw it being this bad right now, but there are some positives, and that's a lot of teams are just beating up on one another. We could see a team. I thought you had 2 losses would be to win the division, but now it looks like 3 losses could win you this division.
You could be right.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked by some of the results today. Minnesota just having no life against Purdue. And David O'Connell, I thought with him being hurt, he would have played bad, but he played very well against Minnesota. So I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think Iowa's going to go 5-7. I still think they're going to go 8-4. I think everything's fine. They're where they should be. The only game I would say for sure is the loss right now for Iowa's remaining schedule is Ohio State. They could beat Illinois. They could beat Northwestern. They could beat Purdue, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Nebraska. They could win all of those games.
It's a way to look at it.
Right. It's not likely,
but
they
lose all
could.
those games. They could also lose all those games.
Oh, exactly. They could lose every single one of those games, but they could also win all of those games.
Yeah.
It's not unreasonable to say they can win all of those games.
Let me just say this one last thing, and I got to let you go, Darrell MVP, but I'll say this, and this is going to sound like I'm an anti-Iowa activist. I'm not, but I just want to make this clear. If you are, as a fan, devoted for change, you're devoted to change for the future, you better hope that Iowa doesn't benefit off of a bunch of teams being down to climb to 8-4. Like, I'm not saying I want Iowa to lose, but you do not want Iowa to get to 8-4 and once again mask, or to some extent mask the issues because you're winning games. That's a problem because that's only going to enable what's been happening here for how many years? Last year with the 10-2 because of the terrible schedule, 2015 with the undefeated year with the terrible schedule, although that was a better offense. And certainly 2020, I have to attribute part of that to COVID. We've talked about that. So I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. How much are fans devoted to wanting change right now? And how does that influence your rooting interest the rest of the way? I'm not saying you root against them, but again, you do not want to just simply benefit off of a division that's taken a step back.
Well, Corey, I would agree with that if I thought any chance that the head coach or offensive coordinator could get fired. But Iowa is one of the few programs known for not making changes. I think Iowa could go 1-11, 2-10, and I still don't think they would make a change. So,
well, see, this is like what James says, and I'm not saying I want Iowa to start losing, but James makes a point, and I think it's a valid point. The only way you maybe get the change you want is if you start losing enough. And I So you're conflicted. I get it. When fans, like some people will judge other fans. Well, how can you say that? Well, that's reality. We've seen Iowa. I mean, last year Iowa had 123rd ranked offense in total offense last year, and yet they promoted their OC to quarterbacks coach. So it's clear that as long as they're winning, each unit is not going to be evaluated exclusively as it should be. So it's a difficult situation, but the problem is not the fans who are acknowledging this, like James. The problem is the program that doesn't look at each unit individually. They look at it collectively. That's an issue because it puts a ceiling on your program. Drill MVP, I appreciate your call. I got a ton of calls to get to here.
Yeah, just do me a favor, everybody, and hit the like and subscribe button.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you again soon. All right. Plugging along here, we head over to our next caller. James is on the line. James, how you doing today?
Better if we won, but it's part of it sometimes. You just deal with it. But first off, I want to say something about you talking about masking it at the end of that last one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what Kirk is doing with Peter stuff? Body of work. You know what I'm saying? Like talking about body of work, talking about 110 in a row. Isn't that kind of what he's doing?
Yeah, it's the same concept.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same concept. Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
We have this idea of, well, we're one team, we win together, we lose together, right? And that sounds great. Like that cliche sounds great. But in reality, it is not placing the proper emphasis on the unit that is absolutely terrible, and that's what it's been. So I feel like we have the same show every week, and I'm thankful that people still tune in to listen to the show. But that's just the reality of it. And that's why it's like late in that game today, you're almost thinking, because I was watching with someone who made this exact comment, you almost don't want Iowa to score to make it look respectable, because then it changes the perspective from other people. And that's a rotten place to be in, where you're actually thinking to yourself, do I root for Iowa to score here or do I not? That's really pathetic that you have to have those thoughts, but I don't judge anybody who does, because it makes sense.
A couple of more things. Obviously, offensive line looked bad, so I don't blame all of it on Peters. But I saw the tweet of like afterwards, Peters talking, right, in his press conference or whatever, and he was saying, that his footwork wasn't good again, and everybody was starting going crazy. And like I know it's been something I've been harped on, but like even on that, sideline throws again, he was overthrowing them when they were throwing on the sideline. Even the one he still overthrew that the guy caught, I don't know who it was. Was it Regain who caught it? Somebody caught one on the sideline where it still was overthrown, but he caught it anyways. But like it's just like they know that play doesn't work and he overthrows every time, but they still keep going to it.
Now, I will give Spencer credit. He made some good throws today. Can we agree on that? He made
good
throws.
I can agree on that 100%. Like especially the one to like Breck was a great throw across the middle when he hit Brody, and he had a couple great throws too. Like when you make a great throw, I'll condone him for making a great throw, but it's like when he makes a bad throw, it's really bad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. What I'll say on that is, I think it's and part of me feels sorry for Spencer to an extent, but I think it is telling when you get tweets from the media, and I won't say who, but if you follow Iowa media people, you get tweets from the media, and they're right about it. I get it. But when they make comments like, really nice throw from Spencer there, when we're having to point out individual throws that were nice from Spencer, that tells you that the body of work is pretty bad, because this is Big Ten football. All right, we shouldn't have to point out individual throws that were nice. This should be, we're talking a quarterback room that's probably dead last in the conference right now. I don't really know of a quarterback. Is there a quarterback in the conference that you wouldn't start ahead of Spencer Petras right now? I hate to throw him under the bus, but I don't think there is. And that's more of an indictment on, as I've said millions of times, as an indictment on the coaching staff and the QB room. Not even the players. I'm talking about the staff that's supposed to be evaluating and recruiting and developing these guys.
Yeah. And then one thing you talked about transfer portal too, like you think they go to transfer portal, but you also got to look at the way they went to the transfer portal, right? Like in the last couple of years when they actually have used it. Like Jack Heflin, he was more of a guy that was like at Northern Illinois. You know what I'm saying? They always go after the small guys. Still be honest this year, we're not to Lafayette. It's like they never try to go really after a big name. You know what I'm saying? Not even a big name, but like even Adrian Martinez. I know there's been some conversations that they might talk to him, they might not have, right? That's still a bigger name than like somebody playing at a smaller school. I'm not saying somebody at a smaller school can't do it, but at least get somebody probably has a better chance of doing it, if that makes sense. And that's something I just don't know if they will do.
I get you.
Because I just haven't seen it. But overall, it's like you were saying, I don't know the other James was saying, I think it's, to be honest with you, I think it's, I don't want to lose. I want to win every game. Obviously, I would like to go 12-0, 13-0, but like sometimes I think it is good to lose in this situation because if it was just somebody's open his eyes with him being like, oh, well, the body of work is good because he won 10 in a row or however many features won in a row. So like maybe it's just beneficial that, yes, we want to win every game, but we also got to look at it from a perspective of like change happens. A couple more things, though. There was a lot of recruits there. What do you think this game, what do you think the recruits think of this game?
Well, you hope that the environment is what's selling the recruits in situations like this because certainly the play on the field offensively is not what you want. I still think the defense played well once they got settled in. It took a while. Phil Parker's got some things to clean up, especially on the ground, but I think you just count on this environment. It was an exceptional environment. You don't want to see fans leaving early, which they did, but you hope that the environment is what's impressing these kids. And some of the kids you hope were already sold. I mean, like, was Asa Newsome there? I don't even know if he was there.
I know Seth Wallace was at his game last night because they played Marion. So it's him versus Alex Moda. So I know that they played at Marion last night. Seth Wallace was there to watch both of them play in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's there tonight. I know Caden was there for sure, and I know the Jones dude from Indianapolis or from Indiana. I know he was there as well.
Leighton Jones, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd never read too far into one performance affecting a recruit, but if you string enough of these performances together, where the offense is poor throughout, it's not going to help for recruiting on either side of the ball.
One more big question: do you think that like people seeing Charlie Jones be successful is going to be tougher for us to keep like the top receivers like Bruce and Johnson?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the future is with Johnson. He's not even playing. So, I mean, I don't know. I think they need an overhaul. I don't know if that means they need to let Kelton Copeland go. I don't know that that's the answer. I wouldn't place the blame on Kelton at this point. They just gave the guy a raise, and in the offseason, which didn't
they gave Brian Ferentz a raise, and he didn't deserve it either. So at that point, I think he was just throwing out money just to try to keep some people there, like Parker, which he should have. But then he felt like, I'm throwing money at Parker and Woods. I got to throw money at everybody else, or else everybody else is going to feel left out, if that makes sense.
Well, this isn't a daycare. All right. This is Big Ten football. We're not handing out raises to people that don't deserve them.
I know, but
hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there's going to be more money, in a year or two with this new TV deal, and I'm anxious to see how Iowa uses it.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's not a place to do it, but Kirk, I just don't know. Sometimes it seems like he's just content on the same way. He's been the same way for how long, so it just seems like he's content a lot of times. But I enjoyed the show as always, and we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a chance you could not win another game this year. I hate to say that, but there is, just because the way the offense looks like. If the defense keeps staying on the field for however long they're on the field for, like, how long were they on the field for like 40 minutes?
Yeah, I got to pull up the official stats. I think I got them here. But yeah, time of possession was ridiculous.
Then you're not going to win a lot of games that way because they're going to get tired at some point, so then they're going to give up points. And if you can't match the points, not even match the points, but if you give up 3, but you can't even give up 3 at some point, if you give up 3 9 times, you can barely get 3 yourself. You're already digging yourself in a hole.
Yeah, you're right.
So we'll see what happens, but I enjoyed the show, and I'll let you get to the other callers because I don't want to take up their time.
Appreciate it, James. Thanks for the call. Oh, I know. There's so many things we can hit on. I didn't know what people's perspectives would be, on this game, given the lack of expectations from a lot of people. But I understand the frustrations, and you're gonna have a good Illinois team coming for that. You had a packed house out in Piscataway. Imagine what it's going to be in Champaign next week. Those fans are going to show up, and I know that that's typically not a real tough place to play. You're likely going to have another sellout next week under the lights in Champaign. Must win. Absolutely a must win. Reminder to everybody that we'll have Coach Patterson here on the show soon. And I don't do this enough, but we got about 300 people on right now. If you're interested in donating to the cause and donating to the show, please reach out to me. Actually, you don't have to reach out to me. You can reach out to me if you want to donate, or I should say, support the show by sponsorship. You can email me from the eyeofthestorm@outlook.com, from the eyeofthestorm@outlook.com. But if you want to donate, there are links to Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal, all in the description. Your support helps this channel to continue to produce content, including these live shows. And we will be joined by Coach Patterson here momentarily. Does not look like yet he's here, but he should be here any minute, I would think. Usually give him about an hour, and it's been about an hour since the conclusion of the game. All right, let's get to our next caller, Vincent. How you doing, Vincent? What you got?
Hey, Corey, how you doing? First thing I just wanted to do, I know I haven't heard anybody say it yet, but I just tuned in probably about 15 minutes ago, but just want to give Michigan credit. I think, for one, they have a really good team. I think a lot of Iowa fans, as tough as it is to have the loss, Michigan just has a really stout, a really good football team and kind of across the board. So credit to them. Also, a little bit of credit to Jim Harbaugh for the kind of game he called offensively. I think he was smart going into it. Stuck with what I would say is probably a safe game plan. Not a lot of risk taking down the field. Smart, safe plays. He wasn't going to allow the environment to have any say or dictate anything with the game. So that's the first thing. Is just credit to Michigan. They're just a good football team. To your point you made earlier, and you're hitting the nail right on the head. The problems that we're having on the offensive side, it's a culmination of so many things from inexperience at the wide receiver position to play calling to offensive line problems. There's just so many things that you touched on or that we're having problems with. That's kind of should be the main focus, that people should realize. There's a lot of things going on that's contributing to the issues that we're having. So it isn't just one thing. What I did want to point out is, since we're talking about the offensive side, yes, people are bringing up Brian Ferentz and what he's done or how he's done as a play caller and OC, and the porous job that he's done. But what I think has been even more, or has stood out even more, is just the O-line. And is it Gary Barnett? Is he the O-line coach?
George Barnett. That's probably the more glaring weakness that I've seen. Is, I know he's new to the position. He's a second-year guy, but there's just a lack of lack of follow through with the O-line. And what I mean by that is, when I'm watching the game and I'm seeing these plays unfold and then watching the replays, you just see a lot of unfinished plays, unfinished blocks. And again, we're harping on the O-line. It's the same thing each and every week. But for me, this is a guy we also have to look at, or a glaring weakness that I look at. In, is there any culpability towards Coach Barnett? There's got to be some kind of responsibility on him, and then I'll turn it over to you. Well, Vincent, I have no issue with what you're saying, because you're right. Offensive line play has been bad since he's been here. But my one question to you would be, what happened in 2019? The offensive line was terrible in 2019, and you had Chris Doyle there, and you had Tim Polasek there. So if George Barnett's the problem up front, why was it so bad in 19? You had you had fifth-year seniors playing guard that year, and the line was terrible. Go look at the Michigan game from 2019. We've talked about this before, Vincent.
Right. I think this is just from my perspective. I think we didn't have the horses necessarily in 2019, but I don't have a really good answer for you. You're bringing up a good point. I think we had starters along the offensive line that just weren't of the highest quality, is probably the best way I can say it. We had the Paulson twins, which I just thought were subpar players. We just didn't have a lot of horses. Where this year, when I look at our offensive line as a whole and our roster of old linemen, you have 4 stars across the board pretty much. I mean, you're talking Logan Jones was a 4-star D lineman, but still a talented athlete. He's been converted to center, playing center. You have Connor Colby, who was a 4-star, Bo Stevens, who was a 4-star. Pardon me. And then I'm having a brain fart with the left tackle right now. Is it still Mason Richmond?
Yes.
But on the whole, we have the horses, in my opinion, and we have the size, which we haven't had in the past, that we should be able to really produce a good O-line, and we're just not doing that. So that's where that glaring weakness comes out to me. And even on top of that, let's say Patterson is doing a subpar job or needs some help.
Don Patterson is doing a tremendous job.
I'm sorry, Barnett.
I know what you meant. Yeah. I just was going to give you a hard time.
No, you're good. Even if Barnett is struggling a little bit or needs some help, coaching the O-line, that's what Kirk does. I mean, that's
I
even
know.
what Brian does. And it's like, yet here we are. And
Right.
as you watch these plays unfold, and I'm sure you see it, I'm sure the fans see it, the most frustrating thing is when you see plays that aren't finished, technical, fundamental plays, playing through the whistle, and just doing your job, within the scope of the offense. Those are the things that are probably the most frustrating is you're like, look, this is just guys not finishing plays or playing to the whistle or staying technically and fundamentally sound with their position, whether you're guard, tackle, or center. You see them getting beaten. It's like, well, why weren't they still blocking? Why weren't they continuing to block? Why did they get beat? Or just because an end goes around you, you don't just say, okay, well, he's around me, the play is over. No, you have to continue your responsibilities from your position until the whistle. And I just don't see it happening. And so for me anyway, that's just one of those things that I keep seeing. It's a glaring issue. I'm not sure if it's just because of lack of coaching from Coach Barnett or if there's other things that can attribute to that, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and again, I just don't. The more time that goes by, it makes me think that we're starting to see, and I'm not the first person to say this. I think we're starting to see the fruits of losing Chris Doyle, and I know fans don't don't want to come to terms and come to grips with that. And I've had people say, well, that's not right, Corey, because look at the defensive line. By all accounts, and again, I'm not the only person who said this, everything that I've heard on a day-to-day basis from practice when Chris Doyle was here was he was very much involved with the offensive line, more than any other group. And, you can say what you want about the defensive line. It's held its own. I give Phil Parker a lot of credit for that. But I would like to think that, I wouldn't like to think, but I think that we're seeing the results of Chris Doyle along that offensive line because, he wasn't just a strength and conditioning coach.
Right.
The dude was a football coach. Right. And, I don't know that we're ever going to know that for certain because, again, I wonder why was the line bad in 2019? You can blame personnel, but, again, we're talking about a couple of seniors that played primarily on the inside that year that struggled immensely, and the line was not good in general. I mean, as bad as it was today, I'd like to think that the 2019 game against Michigan State, or excuse me, against Michigan, and the 2019 game against Penn State were actually worse as it relates to protection. And so I don't know if it's Doyle, but you're right. If Barnett's struggling, it's Kirk's job to make it a move, either step in and give him more assistance than he's been getting, or make a change, and maybe we'll see a change. Let's be honest. Kirk is much more likely to make a change there than he is with the coordinator position, given who they are.
Yeah, I agree. Whether fans want to admit it or not, I know there's a dark cloud that still hangs over Chris Doyle, but I think you're absolutely right. There is an impact on his departure, whether we want to agree with that or recognize that or not. There's absolutely an impact there. The only other thing I'll say is for anybody that's listening or reading, or anybody on the show, sorry, just continue to watch our offensive line, and these weaknesses to me just keep coming up. I keep seeing where we're either missing, where there's miscommunication, where we're missing blocks, if we're passing off to somebody else within the interior of the offensive line, or we're just not playing through the end of the whistle. And even that second or second and a half or 2 seconds can really mean a difference in allowing a play to develop or allowing a receiver to get open. So other than that, just appreciate the time, Corey, and I'll just keep listening and can't wait for Coach Patterson to get on.
Just as Vincent said that, I apologize for being muted there for a second. Appreciate everything, Vincent, you had to say there, and great stuff as always. Great calls as always. We've got Coach Patterson, who is joining us here momentarily. He is in the chat. We've got callers to get to. So if you're on the line, you're on the call line, please stay patient, folks. We will get to your call. Certainly if you're watching through StreamYard, just watch through StreamYard. You don't have to go back to YouTube. I don't want you to lose your place in line. But again, appreciate everybody being here. Right now, we've got the call-in line busy. We've got our StreamYard queue pretty much full, but we can take more. So if you're willing to wait, you certainly can do that. Before we get to Don Patterson, I want to remind you that if you're interested in becoming a premium subscriber here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Now, I will say this, if you're watching through the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel, and there's about 70 people who are watching through that channel, this option is not there. But if you're on this channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm, on my channel, you can click on the little join button. As long as you're not on the iOS app, if you're not in the iPhone app, you should have that option to join, and you'll get some perks that will be starting here this next week as we lead up to the Illinois game. So again, some perks, and it's just another way to support the work going on right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So again, click that join button and read up on becoming a member for just a small charge per month. All right, we're going to get to Coach Patterson in just a moment, but first, let's get to a message from our sponsor, Iowa Floor Covering, and their generous support of the show. Welcome to Iowa Floor Covering, a locally owned flooring store in Bondurant, Iowa that specializes in do-it-yourself projects. If you're a contractor or a DIYer, Iowa Floor Covering has your back. Right now at Iowa Floor Covering, get tough core click together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring for $269 per foot when you install it yourself. That's a much better value than you'll find at any of the big box stores. Looking for other types of flooring? They can help with that too. Between their exceptional product knowledge and commitment to customer service, the guys at Iowa Floor Covering will provide everything you need to complete your DIY flooring project. So what are you waiting for? Skip the box stores now and visit iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. That's iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. Promotional pricing only available with self-installation. All right, appreciate Iowa Floor Covering. Again, they're $269 per foot. Tough core click together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring available by visiting iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. Again, iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. And again, you're supporting a family-run local business right in the heart of Iowa down in Bondurant. Before we get to our call line, let's welcome Coach Don Patterson to the show. Coach Patterson, it is good to see you here on a sunny Saturday afternoon. I wish it was under better circumstances with the Iowa loss. But first of all, how did the experience back from Ken? You got back in time to make it for about right at about an hour, which we typically estimate. So it's good to see you here. And how was the game day experience?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about me, Corey. I had a bowl of soup to tide me over. I have to admit, I was running a little bit low when I got home. But in the meantime, I had a chance to look at the stats, and of course, I had some idea what they were just from reading them off the big board. The one that jumps out to me is rushing yardage, 172 to 35.
Yes.
And as you know, if you get out rushed in the Big Ten, especially, if you get out rushed by 100 yards, the odds are very, very high that you're going to lose. And that certainly held up with our game today. We didn't run the ball as well as we needed to. They were a little more effective running the ball than what I had hoped they might be. But credit to Michigan for being able to do that. You've heard me brag on Corum. It's easy to brag on him. He's an awfully good back. And the backup did a nice job too. So I think the game was won and lost in the trenches, and I think Michigan got the best of us. So that's where I would start.
Don, what's the biggest, because I feel like we just come on here and this is just like Groundhog Day, with Bill Murray just waking up to the same song every morning. But just what is the biggest problem right now, Don?
Well, I give Michigan credit. Both those backs are very patient runners. And when they see a lane to run through, they really have a good knack for accelerating through that hole. And the Michigan backs had a little more room to run. So we're not sustaining our blocks as well as Michigan did today. And the other way to look at it, of course, is our defense didn't do quite a good enough job of getting off those same blocks. So as a result of that, you had a really good percentage for Michigan. I'd say on any given down when they ran the ball, 4 yards or more was pretty common. They had a lot of 4, 5, 6 yard gains. That's what you want to be in second and medium. You want to be in third and short. And we were having difficulty, of course. Thankfully, we threw the ball with better effectiveness than we ran it. And that gave us a chance to get back in the game. I did make this comment to one of the guys seated nearby. He said, "What's a good indicator early on, Coach, that we're going to win this game?" And I said, well, if you really want to go with a simple approach to it all, I would tell you this. The first time we get into a waste down situation, if we run the ball, we're going to lose the game. And if we throw the ball with good play action, we're playing to win. We're going to win the game.
I know this one, Don. I know the answer to this one. Call on me, please.
Well, the first waste down, as I recall, was 2nd and 2. We ran the ball. And a little bit later, we had 2nd and 1, and we also ran the ball. Second half, when we decided to get a little more aggressive with our play calling, it was a little bit late, of course, but at least we showed a lot of good signs in the second half. I think our guys have a lot to be proud of in that they did not quit. But if you're down 20-0 against a decent team, it's not going to happen.
Right.
We tried to make it happen. The fans tried to do their part, but Michigan, and I give a lot of credit to the Michigan play caller because we were hoping we could get McCarthy rattled, but a lot of his, especially first half throws, were high percentage throws, easy completions. A lot of them were thrown behind the line, even to the back, swinging out of the backfield, and it gave him a chance to gain some confidence and gain some rhythm. And as a result of that, of course, I think he threw 75% for the day, 18 for 24. No turnovers on either side. We need to win on turnovers, of course, to be able to beat a good team. And we were only even today because neither team turned the ball over.
How much those numbers, though, Don, were inflated because when you're up 20-0, Michigan is going to sit back in that zone and allow Iowa to move the ball and keep Iowa in front of them because they understand that it's a tall order to expect Iowa to score 21. Is that a factor in this? Were Spencer's numbers inflated because of how Michigan was playing in that second half defensively?
Well, some of the yardage in the fourth quarter you might want to classify as, I hate to call it garbage, but the game was pretty well settled. And as you said, I don't know how much Michigan substituted. Not a whole lot, I don't think, but some. And it seemed like we had a little more time to throw in the latter stages of that fourth quarter. Obviously, the yardage would have been more legitimate if we picked up the same number of yards in all four quarters, but we didn't. I believe we were less than 100 yards at halftime, as I recall. So the yards came a little bit late for us, and we didn't have the proper mix of run and pass, and that of course made the difference.
All right, we've got a bunch of calls. We're not done breaking this thing down, Don, but I want to get to some callers who've been patiently waiting on hold. And to some of our callers, I'm not going to kick you off soon, but we want to keep things rolling because we have a lot of people on hold. First of all, let's get to Kyle, who's been waiting on hold for quite some time. Kyle, appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Corey. I know there's going to be a lot of stuff here that you guys have gone through already, but I have a few observations. Appreciate having you, Coach Don, by the way. So, again, like everyone else has said, I thought this game was completely lost in the trenches. The Michigan's offensive line played remarkably well. I thought the dude that made that comment earlier about our defensive line being non-existent, I don't know what he was watching.
He's just a Michigan fan, Kyle. We can dismiss it.
Yeah, that was garbage. But I do think they got a ton. In the first quarter and second quarter especially, I thought every time they ran the ball, they got so much push that it was a guaranteed 3 yards carry minimum to 3 to 5 yards carry minimum. I counted 3 runs of 2 yards or less the entire game in 36 attempts. So a lot of those runs, a lot of them were on first down, and that means they played ahead of the chains the entire game. They were not, they did not have a lot of 2nd and 12, 2nd and 10 where Phil Parker likes to kind of pin his ears back and throw a little more pressure because he doesn't tend to pressure a whole lot on first down. So the defense didn't really get an opportunity to get set on a longer 2nd or 3rd down and be more aggressive, which is, I think, part of the reason why we didn't have any turnovers in the game. But the offensive line I thought was terrible, particularly between the tackles. I think there were 4 or 5 quarterback pressures that were like right up the gut, like not even just like a lot of times defensive ends, they win battles on the outside and that forces pressure. But like there were a couple of those pressures that were like between the center and the offensive tackle, and that should not happen more than once or twice a game. I thought Logan Jones was awful. I know he's had a tough season. But between the tackles running and I know some of the penalties were questionable. I think the clipping call was terrible, but there were 3 huge penalties on the offensive line that called back 20-yard gains or 15-yard gains. And I know those were not all like obvious calls or all like good calls, but like I know you're talking earlier about the one where he slammed the defensive lineman when we were in the red zone. And I understand that's a bad call, but to me, when the ball is 15 yards downfield, I would not put myself in that position to draw a flag. I know it probably wasn't a great call because we were not playing flag football, but I wouldn't have put myself in that position.
Well, I mean, the whistle's not. What I don't like about that play is the whistle wasn't blown, and if we're teaching our guys to finish plays, and you can't pancake a guy, again, Don, what did you see there? I know you were probably watching the ball, but did you see the replay on the Logan Jones unnecessary roughness penalty that happened before the whistle was blown?
I know the play you're talking about, but honestly, if you were in the stadium, you probably didn't have a good appreciation of the play as you did from home. You got no explanation, of course, from the announcer. So I don't know. I knew what happened. I knew he was blocking way, way behind the ball, as Kyle mentioned. I didn't know if it was after the whistle or not, but it was a mistake of enthusiasm, I guess you could say. He had a chance. He had the guy off balance. He had a chance to drive him to the ground. He did it. But honestly, the ball's long gone by then, and it's unfortunate that it was called. But they're trying to be sure there aren't any dirty plays, so that would qualify as a dirty play, I suppose. Unfortunate, but it's
how is it fundamentally, Don? How is it a dirty play? Fundamentally, how is it a dirty play? Just because it was behind the action?
Well, it'd be a dirty. Are we sure it didn't happen after the whistle? I don't know, because the ball was long.
After the whistle, because they showed the replay simultaneously with the ball. It did not happen.
Okay. I simply don't know. I knew it was a real late flag. The ball was long gone. There were a couple of other. It's hard to figure. We ran the ball a couple of times, and it looked to me like we were out the gate in a hurry, and the flag flew almost immediately. And a time or two, it was the backside of the formation where the flag flew. And I'm thinking, we flew the line of scrimmage so quickly, and I think on the one I'm thinking of, we ran to the left, and I think the flag was on alignment on our left side. I forget which one. But I'm trying to think, how could the flag fly immediately on that play? Because our back was immediately downfield. I'm thinking, I don't know how. Usually if there's a holding call in that situation, it's because the ball's been held up. The ball is still trying to find a way downfield. In this case, though, we had a quick edge, and we were off and running with the football, and yet the flag flew even earlier somehow. And I just was surprised that the flag came out so quickly. You like to think that the officials, over the course of the game, the breaks even out. I am curious about what was the goal line play where I thought I know what it was. It was the pass where he was across the line of scrimmage. Give me the explanation that the announcers had for that play.
The pass interference, which one?
No, the touchdown pass where McCarthy was across the line.
Oh, I didn't get a good replay of that one. I guess when I watched that play live, I didn't even think he was past the line, but obviously the crowd felt he was. Did it look like he was on your end?
I thought he was. All I was looking at was the replay.
Well, as you know, Don, he's got to be completely across the line. So if there's any part of his left foot or right foot or elbow, any part that's in line with that.
I was just surprised. It was already in the third quarter, as I recall. And at that point, what do we care about a timeout? I wish we would have taken a timeout and made them take a look at it, because there were a lot of fans that had pretty good vantage point on the play, and we had the replay too. And at the very least, it would have been a really close call to not flag him for being downfield with the ball. And we'll never know, because to my knowledge, it wasn't reviewed. They went on to the next play, and that was the end of that. So I wish we would have appealed that one.
Kyle, anything else?
Well, the stuff I had was I counted, and there's some different metrics that are used to measure quarterback pressures. I think ESPN said there were 5 or 6, and then some other website said 8, but 8 quarterback pressures and 4 sacks. 5 of the quarterback pressures I counted were on 4-man rushes. Like they weren't sending 6 guys to get quarterback pressures. They were sending 4 guys. And 6 of the pressures happened within 2 to 3 seconds of the snap, which is that's Petrus as stiff as a board. Like a guy gets through the line of scrimmage and he's done. That's not his game. So I'm not necessarily blaming him for that, but when he gets quick pressure, the play's over. So that was, the fact that they got so much pressure, especially late in the game on 4-man rushes without, throwing linebackers, quarterbacks, safeties in there. That's a losing formula for an offense that's struggling.
Let me comment a little bit, Corey. I think our tackles struggled against the edge rushers. Kobe had a rough day against it. Was it 91, I believe?
Yes.
Seemed like he was the guy causing us the most difficulty. But here's part of the problem, too. Those linemen need all the help they can get, of course, and there are ways to help the tackles, of course, involving backs or tight ends. But beyond that, another way in which they can be helped right now, one of Spencer's strengths is being able to throw the ball. If he picks a receiver, I realize he had some inaccurate moments today too, but especially with downfield throws, generally he does a pretty good job of hitting those downfield receivers. Here's where he can improve. His receiver selection is not very good. There were times for sure when he did not take the best option today, and you could see it even from the seats a couple of times. So the bottom line, I'll give you an example. Naked, he rolled out on naked one time. The inside receiver, the deeper receiver, was wide open. He went ahead without even thinking about it, dumped the ball to the man in the flat. We gained a few yards, but it could have been a bigger play without a question. To the inside receiver, there were other examples downfield where we didn't make. There was an open receiver downfield, and we simply didn't see him. So areas where Spencer can improve. Receiver selection leaves something to be desired, and you'd have to go back and look at the game carefully to point out the exact mistakes that related to receiver selection. Other problem.
Let me interject here before you continue with your second point. I think I can speak on behalf of a lot of Iowa fans who would argue that what you just said is completely unacceptable, because that's the same thing we've been hearing. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's the same thing we've been hearing for 3 years. This is the 3rd year. We're hearing the same things we've been hearing for 3 years with Spencer. And I think many people would argue a senior quarterback, a 4th, 5th year guy, should not be having those types of issues. Am I wrong?
That's a sophomore problem.
It's been a recurring problem, yes.
So the question is, why aren't these things why aren't these things actually being fixed in the game? I just, I understand you're not there behind closed doors, and none of us are, but I think it's frustrating. I'm echoing that from a lot of angry fans who I talk to and speak to, and whether it be on Twitter or on here, who we all know the problem. You're absolutely right, Don. I'm not questioning your honesty in this or genuineness, but I think fans are wondering, why aren't these things being addressed?
I'm not privy to those meetings. I don't doubt for a second that Spencer's mistakes are being pointed out to him in film sessions. All I can tell you is in the pressure of the game, things happen in a hurry, and some guys have better judgment on where to put the ball than others. You've heard me say before, the simple reality is you need to send the ball to the guy that deserves it the most, and that could be synonymous with the guy that's the most open, especially factoring in down and distance. If you only need a first down to win a game, of course, you're more than happy to put the ball to a receiver that's going to be able to catch it and run for a first down. On the other hand, if you're down by 20, you better be looking down the field, because we need some big plays. And, making another first down is not going to get us too far. So there were some examples where we didn't make the best choice. And I'm the first to say it's not easy to have great receiver selection, but that's what great quarterbacks are able to do. And some guys can process better than others. Some guys see the field better than others. You've heard me say, here's the other problem that comes to mind. that relates to Spencer's situation. In defense of our pass protection, good quarterbacks have great pocket awareness. And you've heard me say before, Corey, quarterbacks have to see the field and feel the rush. Because if your eyes come down to the pass rush, obviously you can't find a receiver downfield. The good ones, though, they sense that edge pressure, and we used to have a good drill for that, and I don't doubt that they have a drill for it now too, but we had a drill. All I can say is if your eyes are right down at 12 o'clock, you're looking straight ahead. If you get pressure over here at 2:30 and pressure at 9:30, you got peripheral vision that you can see those guys out of the corner of your eye. So if you feel pressure, you have to be able to climb the pocket. You know what I mean by climbing the pocket. Spencer has a tendency just to sit with depth in the pocket. Of course, that makes us more vulnerable off the edge. And most of our problems today, it seemed to me, were tied to pressure off the edge.
Kyle, I appreciate you calling in as always. And we'll just keep doing this week after week. We'll talk about it, and hopefully we'll start be able to review some more positive things against a very good Illinois team next week.
Yeah, man. Also, one last thing: is Arlen Bruce okay? What's going on with this? That's one thing that I was wondering the entire game, because his first touch was in the late third quarter.
Well, he had one catch for 5 yards last week. We don't target our receivers. Now I know we got the receivers involved more in the second half. Reganey got a couple catches, had a couple nice plays after the catch, but Don, I said the same thing last week, and I actually said it after the Nevada game, because it was weird that Cooper DeJean started returning punts at random. And now Arlen is back to returning punts, so I don't have an answer for you.
Even the jet sweeps that we ran a few times last year, like those got 5-7 yards quite a bit, and we haven't seen any of those in probably 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
But anyways, all right. Thanks for the call.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. Yeah. I've said the same thing to you, Don. I don't know. Unfortunately, once again, I don't know how many targets. I wish I do have the first half stats in front of me, because here's the deal. And Don, you may say this is the wrong way of looking at this, but we can look at the total stats all we want. But to me, they're skewed. When you're up 20-0 in that third quarter, Michigan starts playing differently in that third quarter defensively when you're up 20-0. So I'm going to look just at the first half stats here for a second, Don. I want to give you total numbers. Let's see, first quarter. I just want to look at targets here for a second. How many wide receiver targets do you think Iowa had in that first quarter?
Maybe 0.
0. Or no, I'm sorry, 1. 1 target to Brody Brecht, no catches for the wide receivers. 5 targets for Iowa tight ends. We move to the second quarter. Iowa has 2 targets to wide receivers. Boy, didn't have the ball much in that second quarter. Yikes. Just 1 target for Gavin Williams for a catch that went -4 on the screen pass, and then a catch by Sam Laporta on his only target. Third quarter, they get 3 targets to Reganey and 1 target for Bruce. And then in the fourth quarter, they have 2 targets for Reganey, 3 for Brecht, and I think they missed one here because Alec Wick, didn't he have a catch, or was that called back?
I'm not sure that it did. I don't remember one offhand.
But the point is, receiver involvement continues to be an issue, and Jacob Bostic, I guess, went through warmups. I think there was hope that maybe he'd play today, but he never saw the field, I don't think. So
yeah, I did see him suited up, but to my knowledge, he never got in the game. I do recall early in the game, it might have been that first possession even, but early, we forced the ball to 84, and he had 2 guys that were in close coverage, and the pass was broken up, as I recall. But there was a receiver open on that play too. Obviously, Spencer has great confidence in Sam, and we understand that he should have great confidence in Sam. But there are times, put it this way, if a ball's thrown to a closely guarded receiver, it's almost always a tight end that's closely guarded. And of course, that defender might be in position to break it up even.
We're going to get to Hawkeye Howard, Mike, Leo, Kyle in a moment, and also we'll come back to Ryan. We've had a caller on hold now for about a half an hour. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Iowa football at the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Yeah, this is Doug from Tucson, Arizona, formerly Tomo, Iowa.
Hey, Doug. Appreciate you hanging in there for a half hour.
No problem. No problem.
What you got for Coach Patterson?
Well, I was just going to say for a while I've been thinking that it's mostly Brian and the offense that's a problem, but I'm starting to think that we'll never take a step forward with Kirk anymore. It just seems to me that or he's, I don't know what the situation is. And but for instance, when you know the game's out of control and you have a quarterback that's struggling, why wouldn't you put in one of your backups just to see what they could do?
Well, I'll say this, Don, I thought Spencer, again, made some makeable plays there in the third quarter that were probably encouraging to Kirk. I don't know if we'd quantify that as false hope, but I agree with Doug. I've been saying that for weeks. And here's the frustration. When you're down, what was the score? 27 to 7 there at the end? Why is Spencer in there with a minute and a half? Why not give an opportunity to someone else in that situation with a minute to go? Just explain that to me, Don, because that's more maddening than playing Spencer at the beginning, in my opinion. You're not coming back from 27 to 7 down with a minute to go. Let's see what somebody else can do in a real game situation.
Well, the argument for leaving Spencer in the game is to give Spencer the opportunity to gain some confidence with how he can play, of course.
Never heard that before, Don.
Right. But one thing you do have to do, you have to weigh that. Okay, is there going to be a benefit there, even though Spencer's smart enough to know he's going against a softer defense at that point in time, maybe some reserve players even. You have to weigh that benefit for him maybe having a chance to gain more confidence versus the possibility that he might be injured too. So that's one thing sometimes it gets overlooked. We would have, if Spencer's without question our best option at quarterback, it would look a little bit foolish if we got him injured in the last 2 minutes of the game, realizing that the outcome of the game was already settled.
And again, to the caller, to Doug's point on the phone line, we seem to not want to entertain. We seem against the idea, Don, that somebody that's not playing might actually perform well in a game. We don't even seem to be remotely interested in finding that out. That's what's frustrating, I think, to Doug and myself. Doug, is that fair?
Yes. It's it just baffles me that. And the other thing is why the press conferences never ask Kirk something, that puts him on the seat. That just blows me away.
That would be because Corey's not at the press conference.
Yeah, I hear that. And the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'll get off, is I've been praying for Brett Bielema to come to Iowa because I think he would love to come to Iowa, and I just think he's a great coach.
Well, he looked like without watching the game, he must have done pretty well today against Wisconsin. Don, you're aware of what happened there, right?
I didn't know the final, but I knew that I was watching the score, of course, during the course of the game, and I knew that it appeared that Illinois was going to beat them long before the end of the game.
Illinois spanked Wisconsin.
What was the final?
Let me pull it up here because, Doug, do you know?
No, I don't.
I thought the last I saw it was 34-10 maybe or something.
Final score was 34-10 in Madison.
Yeah.
And that's the team we're going to play next week, Don.
Yeah, on their home field.
Yeah. With a night crowd, and I guarantee you that game will – I shouldn't say guarantee, but that game will likely be a sellout.
Yeah, you're right. Probably will. Here's the crazy thing about football, of course. 1 week ago, Minnesota looked unbeatable, and Purdue goes into Minnesota and beats them on their own field. So yes, I always like to say that's why people pay to watch, is you don't know for sure what might happen. So we're going to be underdogs probably against Illinois. I don't know what Vegas is going to say, but I suspect Illinois might be a slight favorite. And that's okay, because I don't think that means much of anything really. There are surprises every weekend, and we just need to be sure that we're one of those pleasant surprises maybe next week or the week after.
And Don, do you think Brett might consider coming to Iowa if that position was open?
I have no idea. I haven't talked to Brett about it. I know Brett's a very loyal person. Illinois has given him a chance to return to the Big Ten. I think and of course he's from Provincetown, Illinois. So I don't know. He probably wonders about making a lateral move within the conference. A lot of people frown on that, and I can understand that. Actually, in my case, our coach
Illinois to Iowa is a lateral. You knew what I was going to say. Illinois to Iowa is a lateral move.
Here's my definition of a lateral move within the same conference. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying one job is equivalent. Right. I'm not saying one job is equivalent to the other one. I'm just saying it's a move within the conference. That kind of stuff is frowned on. I do remember when our coach at Western Illinois went to, at the time it was called Southwest Missouri. Now it's called Missouri State. The Iowa fans were really offended. And then some years later, when Illinois State had an opening on their staff, I knew their AD. I called up to recommend Mark Hendrickson for the Illinois State job, who was our assistant head coach. And the AD said, I have no interest in Mark, but I would be thrilled to hire you as our coach. And he said, I'm not making the offer because I know you'd turn us down, and I don't want you to be able to say you turned us down. But I know you well enough to know you wouldn't make that move because you'd have loyalty for Western Illinois that would prevent you from making that move. And I said, you're exactly right. I would not make that move under any circumstance. That may sound crazy, but that's just the loyalty that I felt for Western Illinois. I suspect Brett has a lot of that same loyalty for Illinois, for giving him a chance to return to the Big Ten. And for that reason, I don't.
You know Brett, but I think you know Brett personally. So, but I think he'd come here, Don. I think it's a little bit different though, because we're talking about his alma mater, Don. That's a little bit different than you going to a different Missouri Valley school.
Right. There's some truth to what you say. The fact that he played here is one more argument for him being able to make that move. But I have no idea what Brett might be thinking. Right now, I'm sure he's just focused on doing the very best possible job for Illinois.
Anything else, Doug?
Thanks, Corey. I appreciate everything you do, you and Don both.
Appreciate it, sir. Thanks for calling in all the way from Tucson.
Yep.
Appreciate Doug and all the terrific calls. We've got, again, a long line of callers who are waiting. We now get to Hawkeye Howard, and Hawkeye Howard, I hope you're stopped. You're not okay. No hands-free driving. You're not in the big rig today, are you?
Oh, no. I'm in the Camaro.
Okay, you're in the Camaro. Good. I hope you didn't feel like your trip up from Springfield was a waste.
Oh, no, I enjoy coming up here. When did Interstate 80 turn into the Autobahn? Well, all I got to say is, oh, man. That first touchdown Michigan got, there was a hold right in front of the referee. She stood there and just twiddled her thumbs. And the referees, it was appalling. I hope Michigan got their pay. They got their money's worth.
Don, was this one of the worst officiated games you've seen in a while? Because I see a lot of people in the chat who are saying this.
It looked to me like I was just looking at Michigan's offensive tackles versus our edge rushers, and it looked to me like there could have been some holding calls against those tackles. Our guys were beating them off the edge, and they were riding them to the ground, and I think it would have been conceivable or even likely that some of those could have been flagged for offensive holding.
It was right in front of me. It was you couldn't miss it. She just looked the other way. Well, anyway, I'm on here just saying we need change, and we all know we need change, and that starts with us voicing our opinion like we are. We're going to have to start calling the office, Gary. We're going to have change, and we're going to have. I don't know what else we got to do. Boycott a game. I don't know what we need. That'll never happen, but we need our voices heard. To me, Don, you're not going to like what I'm going to say here, but Kurt's just telling us this is his team. He's going to do what he wants to do, and that's it. He's going to keep Spencer in there, and that's it. And Kurt's he's hurting his legacy by doing that, and it's going to come down to either he's going to go, or Brian's got to go. That's it. There's no ifs and buts about it. fans were booing. I couldn't believe the boos, and people were yelling at Brian, and heck, I was even yelling at Brian. Of course, they don't care, but this is almost this basically is embarrassing as a Hawkeye fan, and as those kids don't deserve to be embarrassed like he's doing. And there's in your contract there's a saying, if you embarrass a university, you're fired. Well, I would say falls underneath that contract. You're embarrassing people, so he's got to make change.
Well, Hawkeye Howard, let me just remind you of this, and you know this, and I'm not saying this isn't really in contrast to what you just said, but let's remember, and I'm not saying the quarterback situation is not an issue, and evaluating quarterbacks and developing quarterbacks, that's all an issue. However, one could argue what you just said is a micro problem, and the macro problem is Kirk's devotion to Brian and devotion to a play style that some may argue is dated. And so I understand what you're saying. Let's remember too, though, in the offseason, Kirk promoted his son after a year where the offense ranked 123 out of 130 teams, promoted his son. And what did the fans do in response? What did they do in July and August to respond to that move by Kirk? They sold out every single game.
But
we're not even close.
Yeah, and I was on that boat.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but we ain't even close to forcing change. Whether you want it or not, that's nowhere even close, because the big money donors are still giving them a lot of money, and the fans are going to games, and that's all there is to it. That's the name of the game.
Yep. And I knew this by saying that. I knew this, but I'm just saying from here on out, maybe the boosters need to shut the money off. If there's boosters listening, hey, no more money, and here I'm up here spending money and going to games. It's not going to get changed. So, but hindsight is everything, but we need, like I said, we make our voices loud enough. Maybe we can get some change, because Brian's not doing a good job. Poor Spencer. He's a good kid, but it's just, I feel sorry for him, and those kids playing, and those coaches who are training these kids are not doing their job. And the strength is, I agree with, this is part of missing Doyle. Like him or not, he was a heck of a strength coach. I had the fortune, got to meet him when I went up there to wrestling, so he's a hell of a, he can make you bang some weight. So he has a knack to getting people to do things, but he's got some, he's got something over his head. But that's just my opinion. I'll get off the line here, and I got a lot of driving to do and to get home, so I got to find someplace to eat, because Manicollins is shut down, and that kind of broke my heart.
Is it shut down? What does that mean? It's shut down.
Well, I went to Mana there to where the restaurant there where I usually went along the interstate. It's closed.
Is that the Oxyoke Inn?
Yeah.
Don, what's going on?
Well, now the Oxyoke Inn is not anywhere near the interstate. Are you talking about right off the interstate, or are you talking about?
Yeah, right there, Hyamana.
Yeah, I think the Oxyoke Inn is open. I'm pretty sure, but where are you now? Are you still in Williamsburg?
No, I'm past Williamsburg. I was sitting at a rest stop here somewhere past Bub Marengo.
Real quick, Hawkeye Howard, I'm assuming, I guess that the only reason why that restaurant's closed is because they're not sponsoring our show.
But that's it.
Right, Don?
I was trying to get to the kickoff. Boy, I tell you what, there was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And I did get to the halftime show. So I got to see some of those. I got to see that. Yeah, Urban Meyer's taller than he looks on TV.
Hawkeye Howard,
all right, guys.
To Springfield.
Yeah, I got about an 8-hour drive.
All right, drive safe, sir. Get home, and we'll talk with you at least. If we don't hear from you Tuesday on our show with Mark, we'll hear from you Wednesday night.
All right, bud.
Thank you, sir. Always enjoy Hawkeye Howard, and good to see that he made it up to Iowa City safely. And Don, is there anything? I know that was a lot of criticism from Hawkeye Howard, but he has a right. Don, he has a right to his opinion. He has a right to feel frustrated. He has a right to want change. I'm not asking you if you agree with everything he said, but I'll just say I agree with some of what he said. And but the bottom line is, as it was brought up here in the chat, I mean, money is the name of the game right now, and as long as fans are paying for seats and the donors are giving big, I don't know what motivation there is to make change. And I'm not advocating for Kirk Ferentz to be let go. Kirk has given so much to this program over the last 23 years, Don. I know you would agree with that. Right. But fans have every right to be frustrated with this offense, and we're in for basically the same story each and every week. It's frustrating as all get out, and I understand Howard's frustration. Let's get to our next call. Again, we're going to go rapid fire on some of these, so we can get through everybody. Mike is on the line, our Michigan fan. Mike, appreciate you being patient, sir.
Hey, no problem. How you doing?
We're hanging in there.
So what'd you think of the game? I'm just kind of get your overall take.
Been on for an hour and a half. You don't know what I thought of the game.
I was just wondering if you had more specifics. Now, I got a quick question for you. I keep hearing all this talk about, Caleb. Now, is he your starting quarterback or running back, or is it? I mean, LaShawn looked good today. I mean, all things considered.
I don't really think the depth chart means much, but the depth chart I think still has Gavin as your starting running back. But that's not the case. I got the final stats in front of me. Don, how many carries would you say that each guy got today, if you had to guess?
I'm guessing that number 2 and number 4 had more than 25.
Yes, in total for the game, LaShawn had 8 carries for 34 yards. Caleb had 12 carries for 33 yards. Do you want to know how many carries Gavin Williams had?
2.
Was he even in?
0.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't see Gavin at all. I
thought he was in. I saw him in there.
He was in there. He had a catch on the screenplay that got blown up for a -4. He was in there, but no, those other guys are just playing better right now.
Yeah, because it looks like kind of LaShawn was doing more of the impact stuff than Caleb was.
LaShawn ran well, and I like both of our backs right now. I don't think the running back room is the problem.
And it looks like Patterson was starting to find tight ends. Now, I don't know how much of that was based on Harbaugh kind of loosening up the defense towards the end, but I thought that Reganey, I thought he was a tight end. I guess he's a wideout.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a wide receiver.
Let me just make this clear, though, Mike.
Most of the time, an inside receiver, of course.
Yeah, let me just make this clear, though, Mike.
Reganey lines up inside more often than out.
He has not had – Spencer has never had problems finding his tight ends. Most fans would say that there's way too much importance placed on tight end involvement and not enough wide receiver involvement. But he did connect with his tight ends. The issues he was having early in the game seemed to be minimized in that third quarter. But, again, part of that's a result of how Michigan was playing.
Yeah, it looks like he found Brecht on a few big plays.
Yeah, Brecht is a young guy. He's a redshirt freshman, and they got some young guys back there. Who knows if Bruce is ever going to come back? It seems like he just week after week it's the same story. But they have a young group of receivers out there, but they got to get better too. It's not just on quarterback play and line play. There are plays out there, Don. I know you'd attest to this. There are still plays out there where wide receivers are not getting separation.
Right.
So are you going to do anything about this offensive line? Because it looks like your game's going to live and die with their execution.
Well, I'm not going to do anything about it.
Is Brian or Kurt or whoever.
I mean, they're working at it. I don't know what, it's not like they're just going through the week without, with the offensive line going home or going to Arby's for the week. I know they're out there, they're working, but this has been a multi-year problem, Mike. This isn't the first year of struggles. They've struggled along that offensive line 3 of the last 4 years. So it's a major concern right now. And we've talked about Chris Doyle being gone. That's a factor. And Tim Polasek. And I mean, they've had a lot of attrition as far as guys who work heavily with the O-line.
Now, what about in the upcoming, do you have any early commits for the O-line that, might be looking good?
Well, Kate, we got the number 1 tackle in the country next year in Caden Proctor, which is obviously going to help. And you have a 4-star Trevor Lauk, who's likely a tackle as well. So, no, they've recruited well at the positions. They've recruited well everywhere. That's what's ironic about the offensive struggles. They've actually recruited fairly well at quarterback and at offensive line. Now, tight end and wide receiver actually has been a struggle. And now running backs become a struggle with the decommit of Raphael. But they've actually recruited fairly well. But development-wise, they've got to develop these guys better. And, Kirk would just tell you we got to execute better. So if you want the simple answer, that's it, I guess.
So, I mean, there's some hope for the near future.
I hope so. So.
Okay, well, get me out of here so you can talk to one of your Iowa guys.
You're good. Thanks for the call as always, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Again, we got tons of callers on hold here. I want to get to a couple things before we move on because I've been neglecting some of these super chats. A user by the name of Don Patterson's biggest fan with the super chat here. He says, Corey, do you make a change at O-line coach now? I don't believe there's any point in making a change now, unless, Don, they make a change. I guess the only way you'd make a change, Don, what do you think about this change? And I'm not advocating for it, but this is an idea. If you believe that George Barnett is a big part of the problem, and I'm not saying he is, but if you believe he's a big part of the problem, then why not, if you're going to get rid of George Barnett, you do it midseason, you move Brian back over to the O-line, and you promote John Budmeyer to be your full-time quarterbacks coach. Is that a feasible move midseason?
No.
Why?
Because I don't think George Barnett is the root of the problem. I think he wouldn't deserve that. I don't think he's done anything to deserve that, to deserve a demotion.
Well, what's he do? Some people would say his units have not performed well since he got here, Don. He is in his second year. Are you saying that's not long enough to give a guy?
Yeah, I think the thing you should expect to see is something you have been seeing. They're trying different combinations to try to find the best 5 O-linemen. And obviously, as it gets a little bit cooler, you have a better chance to play with those same 5 guys all the time. As I know it, we're really looking at more than just a couple of guys for those offensive guard positions. It appears to me, from what I've read and what I've observed, it seems like we're pretty well decided on who our tackle should be. It appears that we're convinced that our best center is wearing number 65 just like last year. Not quite playing the same way, but at least he appears to have the vote that he's the very best option at center. And yet we're rotating guys around in the offensive guard positions, and that's a good thing. So, we're trying to find different combinations. I guess I just make this observation. If the people that are on the field right now, from a playing time standpoint, are getting mixed results, the simple thing that the fans, I think, do expect us to do is to look at other opportunities for other players. Let's take a look at other players and see if there's a chance that they might perform even better. We're rotating any number of guys in for the offensive guard positions. The one obvious position where that has not happened, of course, is quarterback. We honestly don't know how Padilla would play because we haven't seen him since last fall. And we certainly don't know anything about our number 3 quarterback because we haven't seen him at all in a game situation. So you brought up the point, and you're right. Late in the game, would there have been anything wrong with letting Padilla take that last possession? I can understand they would argue we want Petrus to gain more confidence with how he could play. So we want to give him the chance. He's still our best opportunity to move the ball down the field. And that may be a true assessment. But let's face it, there's a little bit of risk involved with him out there playing in that scenario. And there would be an argument to maybe let somebody else play rather than get our starting quarterback injured when the outcome of the game was already settled.
And Don, I just don't understand, the people, and Kirk has said this, that he believes that Spencer's the best guy for the job. What bugs me, and a person can make the argument, well, they kept Spencer in there at the end. Kirk kept Spencer in there at the end to build his confidence. Well, what does that do to the confidence of Alex Padilla And what does that do to the confidence of Joey Labus when you see not only the room struggling week after week, but then you see garbage time, the game's out of reach, and you still can't make it onto the field? What does that do to those guys' demeanors?
It's demoralizing, I'm sure.
All right, let's get to Leo, who's been Kyle first, and then Leo. Sorry, Leo, we've got. I want to stick to our order. And Kyle, before you get going, thank you for being here, and thank you for being ultra patient. And I do see here, Kyle, you have become the newest member to our YouTube channel, so thank you for that, Kyle. And what do you have for Coach Patterson?
Coach, I'm a baseball coach, and so as a baseball coach, I try to use data the best I can to make decisions as opposed to just using my eyes, because everybody's just been saying how bad the offensive line is, and I want to 100% say that they're not very good. But also, I find myself noticing every single time somebody misses their blocks now, and I didn't used to notice that. Or when I watch other college football games, I see that too. And so I'm sort of wondering, are my eyes more attuned to mistakes because we've been talking about how bad this offensive line is all the time? And so I'm wondering, from a coaching standpoint, within baseball, if you're a 300 hitter or you throw 60% strikes, or even within the basketball world, depending on where you're shooting, if you're shooting, say, 40 to 60%, you're a good shooter, right? Like, we kind of know what those normal stats are. But as a non-football guy, I don't really know how to assess the offensive line. Is it things like QB hurries and QB hits and sacks? Is it are there simple things like, during a passing play, an individual offensive lineman should be able to hold their block 75% of the time for 2 seconds? Is there something that you can help us who maybe don't have a background so that we can better assess how an offensive line is doing, rather than being a little bit emotional and allowing our eyes to maybe dictate things that aren't actually true?
One of the things you look for, Kyle, you look for consistency in play. And a simple way to think about it, as you evaluate a particular play, you ask yourself the hard question: was that a winning effort on that play, a winning result, or a losing result? Trying to avoid that gray area where you can say, well, you could call it either way. I think the best coaches I've ever known had high standards. I'll give you an example. Marv Cook was a consensus All-American, and it was rare, I think, when Marv graded in the 90s. Oftentimes he would be in the high 80s, maybe the low 90s, depending on who the opponent was. And I remember a little bit later in time, a tight end coach that will remain nameless, he had a different group of tight ends than the one I had. And his starting tight end was grading out maybe at 95%. And I'd seen him play enough to know that tight end coach doesn't have high enough standards. He was too quick to give a guy a plus grade on a particular play, simply because the bar wasn't high enough. And I don't think you're going to get excellence out of a player unless you explain to him that that's our goal, was for you to be able to dominate the other person, not just to find a way to stay in the way of the guy, but to actually do a nice job of whatever the assignment might be, do a nice job of moving him off the line of scrimmage and moving him in the direction you want to move him. And that's the challenge, of course, for any blocker up front, is to be able to move that man that's across from you who's so determined not to be moved. So I guess all I'm saying is the simple way to do it is to simply ask yourself, is that a winning or a losing performance? Obviously, if it had a lot to do with the bad play, then it's clearly a minus performance. But I would suggest you're going to get better with your improvement in the offensive line if you have a high standard for a plus grade, versus a minus grade. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm not going to give you a grade on a particular snap simply because you didn't do enough to earn a plus grade. And there are times the typical grade sheet you'd have a column of plus grades, a column of minus grades, and then a few no grades. You simply didn't do enough to earn a positive grade. And I hope that helps explain. To me, if you can somehow make it, it's either good enough or it's not. And if it's not good enough, that's a minus grade. And let's face it, if you're grading out at 70%, then it's kind of hard to imagine that the defensive player that you're blocking all day long is also grading out at 70%. Because somebody should be minuses rather than, how can both of them grade out at 70%? It makes sense?
Absolutely.
You follow me?
Yep.
Yeah. If the standards are too low, then maybe they both grade out at 70% because neither coach is really holding his players to a high standard. One happens to be a defensive line coach, being too easy on his players. The other one, of course, is an offensive line coach that is too quick to pass out a plus grade 2. So I hope that makes sense. And then it's all relative, of course. Maybe one guy only graded out 74%, but the guys in competition with graded out at 66%. Well, and somebody might even say that's not much difference. And you've heard me talk about this, Corey, as it relates to drop passes. Think of it this way. Easier numbers to remember. What about a guy that grades out 80% versus 85%? Okay, one graded out 85, one graded out 80. You might say that's not very 85 versus 80. My response is yes, it is, because that means one of them had 15% minus plays. The other one had 20%. So don't compare 85 to 80, compare 15 to 20. And now you get an idea of how important it is to have that higher grade. Even if it's only 5 points higher, it still matters.
That's
Hope
helpful.
that helps.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Anything else, Kyle?
That'll do.
Appreciate you becoming a member and calling in today.
Thanks.
Thanks, sir. All right. We have Leo, who's been waiting on hold forever. Leo, welcome to Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson.
Thank you. I can't believe I haven't called before.
I can't believe you haven't called before either.
I love the Big Ten, and so I watch. Of course, I'm a Michigan podcast, so Mike is not the only Michigan guy. I'm another one, but I'm not delusional, so that's good for you guys.
Appreciate that.
Corey, and I know how bitter it is, especially when you bleed with that school and but you guys won 10 games last year. You're not in the toilet. There's things that you probably got to fix. I was watching that defensive line is good. I don't know what the other callers were talking about, bro, but I was watching your D line is great. It's just they were out there. So the time of possession was did we double it?
No, it evened up quite a bit in the second half because Iowa won it in the fourth quarter. It ended up being 33-26.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it did even up, but they couldn't get off when it mattered, and I understand it's frustrating but let me tell you this, as a Michigan crazy guy, we were in purgatory for years. And I hear a lot of your fans calling and say, hey, let's make these switches. Maybe it's time for this person to go. Be careful what you wish for. I mean, we lost Lloyd Carr, and gosh, we went to the toilet of the Big Ten. It's the big house, host over 100,000 every single game. We were half full. I mean, we were 5-6 wins, sometimes 7, if we were lucky before Coach Harbaugh got there. And even when Coach Harbaugh got there, it takes a minute to get the right offensive coach, defensive coach, get the right concept in there, and to get your recruits. It's not something that happens in one season. And I don't want you guys to think that you're in deep water right now because mediocre play from the offense. And it was anemic. I'm not going to lie. I watched it.
This isn't the first year of anemic offensive play. Fans are not reacting based on a few bad games. Do you realize that the offense was 123rd in the country in total offense last year?
I do. Yes. And I was thankful.
Well, this is not a Brian Ferentz has been here, 5 years now as the OC. This is not a sudden decision a sudden opinion by fans. I think fans, I don't hear many fans. There are fans who are saying that they want Kirk Ferentz gone, but I think most people who are looking at this objectively want change in the offensive coaching staff. They don't want to see Kirk Ferentz go down that way, but it's obvious the offensive coaching staff is not working out. I don't believe this is a situation like Lloyd Carr at all. We're not talking about a head coach of our program. We're talking about an offensive coaching staff that right now is not getting it done.
Yeah, well, also, we for the first few years we had Josh Gaddis. That was that was trial and error, to put it nicely. before we got the right people in and we kind of got the concept, and then we started clicking on offense. But before the first couple years he was there, it looked like a disaster waiting to happen. You know, I think it's just, you know, you got the physicality, you got some good line coming in, you got some physical running backs. Again, I think it's just maybe getting with the times, maybe going to like a little spread offense, maybe wildcat here or there, just different look for you guys.
Yeah, Don, I don't think I've said this before. I don't really know. No offense to Brian, I've said this before. I think Brian would be a really good offensive line coach. I wonder if he's in the offensive mind that they need, and you need an offensive mind to be able to compete in this conference. I don't know how to approach this question, Don, but how would you approach the rest of the season, given the struggles offensively? How would you approach strategy the rest of the season? Do you make big changes mid-season? Do you just stick with what you have and continue to plug away, as grind, as Kirk Ferentz would say?
Well, because our defense is going to keep us in so many games and our kicking game is outstanding, the tendency is to think that we're not that far off as long as we can be just more respectable with our offense. And that suggests that drastic changes are not necessary. I wouldn't consider it to be a drastic change to look at how Padilla and Levis play. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And obviously, we don't know how next weekend will play out. So let's go with a couple of possibilities. What if we have a resounding win over Illinois? I would think that'd be a great time to look at the second and third quarterbacks. And to go to the other extreme, what if we're behind by 3 touchdowns against a good Illinois defense? That's a good time to take a look again at the second and third quarterbacks to give them a chance to show what they can do. Because even if the starter puts up big numbers in the fourth quarter, the obvious question is, did it matter? Was the game already all but over? And you suggested that today maybe Michigan was a little in prevent mode in the fourth quarter, knowing that they had a good solid lead. There's some truth to what you say.
Okay. Thanks so much for having me. And Coach, do you think I will have the personnel to make those kind of changes right now? I've seen a couple slot receivers. You got Laporta. You think they got the personnel to be able to change their offensive concept this year?
I think there are certain players we can look at. Obviously, the quarterbacks, we can take a look at them because neither one of them's taken a snap this entire season. We've already got 5 games in, and they haven't been on the field, not even for one snap. So it's hard to, as Corey suggested, how do you think the backup feels if there's no scenario where he's able to play? If we got a comfortable lead against Nevada, he doesn't get to play. If the game's all but settled against Michigan, he doesn't get to play then either. So he's trying to figure out what scenario applies to him. And it would be logical. He might feel that none of them apparently do because he hasn't seen the field yet. And yet he's played when the game was in doubt just last fall.
Yeah, good stuff, Coach. Thanks.
You bet. And let me say one thing. Is our Michigan caller still on the line? Still listening?
I'm here.
Yeah. I used to recruit against Lloyd Carr. I know Lloyd Carr very well. And this won't surprise you to hear this. He's one of the finest men I've ever known.
Yes.
And I used to recruit against him and of course, coach against him too. When he was an assistant, when he was the defensive coordinator. So he's a fine man. And in my mind, he should not have been replaced when he was. I hated to see that happen.
Oh, I did too. And you saw what the results of it, Coach. That was terrible. And that's why I was telling Corey, we were in purgatory. And so don't wish for, I'm sorry, Corey. I thought they were calling for Kirk Ferentz change. I guess his son is offensive coordinator.
Correct.
Okay, I apologize. I heard wrong. I was like, no, you don't want the head coach gone. He's
well. The problem, Leo. Let me speak for the fans who maybe do want Kirk gone, and I'm not saying that's me, but when you promote your son, who is not qualified to be in the position he's in, and I think a lot of fans would tell you that he's not. And I guess that's up for conversation or debate. But they believe then you're no longer putting the program first. So as much as they love Kirk Ferentz, they don't believe he's putting the program first. I'm just being the messenger, just telling you what I think a lot of fans are feeling.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this too, guys. Even though I'm a guy from Michigan, I appreciate Iowa because Iowa has always been one of the consistent programs in the Big Ten. And as far as I'm concerned, we're not that far off from the SEC. I think we're second best. So we appreciate everything you guys do up there too, man. I appreciate your football program.
Well, appreciate you calling in, Leo, and feel free to call in anytime.
You bet. Bye-bye.
I want to address this in the chat here, and this is the only time I'm going to address it. Richard. Corey, what was Spencer's completion percentage last week against Rutgers and this week against Michigan? Above 60%. In the Nevada game, there were several drops that were not because of Spencer. Spencer, by the way, is spelled with a C, not an S. Richard, Corey, what do you think recruits think if they watch your channels? Well, guess what, Richard? I am not employed by the university. My job is not to be a cheerleader for the university. If you want a cheerleader, you're welcome to go on to the U of I website. They have plenty of programming available on YouTube that you can watch on a weekly, sometimes a daily basis. But I'm going to call it like I see it. My job is not to cheerlead for Iowa, all right? And I'm not going to make my calls based upon Spencer Petras' performances against Nevada, Rutgers, and in mop-up duty against Michigan when you're down 20-0. If that's an answer to your question, I hope you appreciate the channel. But if you don't, like I said, there are plenty of Iowa channels out there that I'm sure will tell you what you want to hear. That being said, Alex, good to see you, man. Waiting a while in the queue. How are you?
Good. Well, I just got back from Marshalltown, so I wasn't able to jump on until obviously a little later. And I'll keep this kind of brief. So, question for Don, and I apologize, I haven't been able to listen to the show up until this point. But what is the mindset of going for that fake knee? Like, what when you saw that? What was your thought process, and what would be the thought process of, say, Brian or Kirk to go for that fake knee at the end of the half?
Let's talk about the fake knee, Don. Actually, it's a fake kneel down, would be the technical term, right?
Well, somehow I admit I wasn't even looking because I assumed we were just going to take a knee, and then I realized, well, something's happening. But what happened? We were trying to run around the end, I guess. Is that what we were trying to do?
Yeah, we had there's 5 seconds left. We were on the 25 after Michigan scored, and it was a touchback. So we we did a fake kneel down. Well, I don't know if it was a direct snap to, I think it was LaShawn, or Petras handed it off, and Petras and I think the other running back ran to the left to the Iowa side, and then LaShawn ran to the right side and went for 6 yards or some
yeah
like that. I was, and Corey, I saw you tweeted that I can't remember specifically what you tweeted, but yeah, that kind of irritated me because it's the one time you run a trick play is the time when it doesn't matter at all, and it was I felt like at the complete wrong time. I
said, let me read you exactly what I said, Austin or Alex, because yes, this is what and I hope Don, you understand why I said what I said. I just said that fake kneel actually upsets me. It actually upset me, Don.
So what is the thought process? I'm trying to figure out from a coaching standpoint, because obviously you coach.
Well,
what's the thought process? Or are you dumbfounded? It's just like we are.
Well, the more logical fake that comes to mind for me, if you're going to fake taking a knee, is you fake taking a knee, and the hope is that you can hit a receiver on kind of a jog and go. You know what I'm saying? He kind of comes easing off the ball like he's just coming out of his stance. That's all he's doing, and then you hope that the corner appears to see the quarterback preparing to take a knee, relaxes, and then you throw it over his head. That makes some sense. Of course, you actually have a chance to hit something like that. And I was trying to figure out, he faked taking a knee and then handed the ball off to a back, but he handed him to a back basically in the center guard gap, right, somewhere close to the midpoint of the formation. So what are the odds we're going to be able to get around the end of the formation to be able to run yards or 75, whatever it was? Slim and none.
Yeah.
That 6-yard gain helped our average, but there's got to be a better way to try to do something with that last few seconds.
Yeah, and one of Brian, I like the chat you pulled of the exotics that Brian Ferentz had pulled. Another question for you, Don. It's been, I've said it, and a lot of people probably said it on the chat about how bad the officiating crew with this, and how this is the worst officiating crew that they've seen. I always refer back to that. I think it was the Outback Bowl against Florida. That was a pretty bad officiating game, but there was a time where Kirk Ferentz called the timeout, like after, I believe it was after the clipping penalty, and kind of the chew, for lack of a better term, chew an official's ass. What is the hope there? Obviously, you can't like pick up the flag or reverse the call. Like, what's like if the coaches are talking to the officials, like what's the like kind of the hope there? Like saying like the coaches are seeing like, hey, that's a bad call, or what's the thought process on that? Calling the officials, calling a timeout to, chew out an official for a bad call.
Well, I thought the most effective, I'll give you a specific story. After my first year at Western Illinois, I was up at Wisconsin spring practice, and Barry Alvarez was the head coach at the time. And Barry asked me then, he said, what was your biggest difficulty in year one? And we had a good season, but we weren't a playoff team, so it was good, but not great. I said, I thought for a little bit, and I said, I suppose the officials would be the biggest issue I had. And he said, well, you didn't think they were going to let you come in and take over the league, did you? And I kind of laughed. I thought, well, no, I didn't think they were going to be nice to us since we were the new kids on the block. And he said, how'd you react? And I said, well, I yelled at him for a couple of weeks, and then I realized that's a waste of time. So I'm going to try to kill him with kindness from this point forward. And one of the things I would never do is try to show up an official during the game. In other words, you can make your point, but the appearance is just that you're having a discussion. You don't need to show that you're really, really upset and really, really animated with what's going on, because at that point, in their eyes, you're just trying to embarrass me, and you're trying to suggest I'm calling a horrible game. I don't appreciate that. Because Barry asked me, he said, well, what did the officials do? And he said, did it help to yell at them? And I said, no, it didn't. And he said, I don't know what would make you think it would help. He said, you can get your point across without yelling and screaming. Just let them know. And I'll say it this way. Years later, I ran into one of the officials over in the golf tournament over at Quad Cities at the John Deere. And this is one of the referees, the white hat. And he said, I always told my officials, if Coach Patterson is disagreeing with what just happened in the game, you can pretty much take it to the bank that he's right. And I appreciated hearing that from him, because if they blew a call, I would be able to express to them, you missed the call, and without embarrassing them again. And that simply meant, okay, we owe you one. And you've heard that term, and there really is some validity to it, a makeup call. If they miss a call that hurts one team, then I think in the interest of fair-mindedness, I think they might try to give that team a break later in the game, simply because they knew they blew a call earlier. So I think that was the best way to have an effect on the game. Taking a timeout, of course, that was kind of extreme. You never know, but that you might need that timeout. In the end, it didn't matter, but we didn't know that at that point in time. And
make you come back, Don. I just think I tweeted the same thing. I think it's just in that situation, bad timing to burn a timeout in the second half when you're already down multiple scores. That is not the time to call a timeout to make your point known. And I think Kirk Ferentz has earned the exact right you just described, that when he's ripping into official, it's probably for good reason. And he was right. It was a terrible call. The announcers brought it up on the broadcast on Fox. But what's more than that is you're not going to accomplish anything. They're not going to reverse the play. They're not going to reverse the call. So
they're not going to give you a timeout back.
Rip into them, and during the next TV.
Correct. And you say rip into them. Maybe your words are such that they feel like you're ripping into them, but The general public doesn't realize that because it appears you're just having a discussion. It's not animated. There's nothing to be gained by trying to show up an official because they don't appreciate it. And if I was an official, I probably wouldn't appreciate it either.
Yeah, I like with you, Don. I always thought if Kirk Ferentz is, he's pretty mild tempered from what, and if I think you see him get animated or very, visually upset, I think it's kind of warrants like, oh, maybe we really screwed, really badly messed up. And maybe the last thing I'll say, no, Corey, I heard you say that there's a lot of problems with this offense, quarterbacks, offensive line, offensive coordinator. So there's a lot of problems that are tied with this offense, but it's just like there's no one quick fix to make everything, right as rain. But I think there's always those little things that we can change. And I think the offensive line, has played a lot better. I think with going up against Michigan and, I think they're a really good defense too. I'm not going to discredit them. Their defensive line, I think the Iowa offensive line, they got a lot of push. I felt like Iowa got more inside push when they ran inside, like an inside zone. But then when they try to go like off tackle or outside, I felt like they had a good push up front at some points. Now that could be, maybe at during some points of the game where Michigan probably felt like they had somewhat control of the game. They played more of a kind of a shell or prevent defense. And everyone's talked about Spencer Petras. I think, you look at the stats, his stats look good, but it's pretty much in garbage time. At what point do we just try Alex Padilla or Joey Labus? There has to be a breaking point. And the second thing is that Brian Ferentz is offensive coordinator. I think this is his 6th year with Iowa. And, we've had, I think his best offense was 88th ranked offense. And ever since then, it's been in the hundreds. Last year was 123. We're currently sitting at either 130 or 131, dead last or next to last. There's got to be a point to where something's got to break to where Gary Barta, because Brian doesn't answer to Kirk because of nepotism. So Gary Barta's got to step in and just say, we have to make a change, whether it's, next week, tomorrow, or at the end of the year, and say, this isn't working, and the boot, and unfortunately, nothing's going to happen until the boosters and the donors step up and say, we're going to pull our money unless something drastic happens. And maybe one last question for you, Corey, because I kind of said this when Michigan went up 20-0. Did you just kind of say to yourself, it's over?
Yeah. Oh, it was over. I thought it was, when it went, let's see, was it 17-0 first?
No, it was 13. It was 13-0. And then when Michigan scored that, the touchdown to go 20-0, that's when I said it's over. Well, I still listened to the entire game, but I pretty much said Iowa's not built to come back.
No, they weren't built to come back from 13-0 down. But Don, you made you brought this up in the past that the magic number is typically 17. If you can get up by 17, typically you're going to win that football game.
Yeah.
And certainly they did today. Iowa wasn't. They got down 17-0. 3 scores fairly early in this game. So 20-0. Theoretically, if you convert that drive in the fourth quarter to a touchdown, it is a 1-score game, and you never know. My fear, Don, is that when you're making a comeback in the third quarter because you are down 20-0, and Michigan is laying off defensively, and you're able to move the ball down the field effectively, that it's kind of masking some of the issues that got you to 20-0 down in the first place.
It's kind of like the Rutgers game when Iowa started playing kind of prevent on defense and Rutgers got that touchdown, it seemed like.
Right.
Yeah, Don, is there substance to that? Even from a coaching staff perspective, is there a danger almost? I understand that Kirk is a seasoned guy, but is there almost a fear that, Spencer looks good and impresses you in the third quarter, and it kind of almost subconsciously makes you kind of, believe. I saw a tweet from Tom Kakert here after the game. Let me just read you the tweet here, Don, from Tom, because I thought this was telling. And I'm not saying he's wrong, that Kirk Ferentz is wrong, but according to Tom Kakert, who was at the press conference, he said, and I quote, "Ferentz says he thought his team grew offensively in today's game." Don, they scored 14 points, 7 of which came in garbage time.
Right.
How can you tell me that the team grew offensively. That frustrates me when I read that.
Yeah, maybe Kirk was simply suggesting that the fact that they didn't quit, they were at least inspired with their effort. Prime example, to me, it was a great play. How about Laporta with his catch in the flat? It looks like it's going to be minus yardage, and he shakes off not one guy but two tacklers. That was a really inspired play. And there were other people that were making some inspired plays too. Reganey comes to mind, of course. Lachey. Yeah, Lachey had 4 catches for 84 yards. He had a good day. But I'll caution those people that want to just strictly defend our starting quarterback with numbers. Numbers are very misleading in this regard. Part of being a good quarterback is being able to extend plays. Obviously, it's no secret on anybody's part. Spencer's not, to put it kindly, Spencer's not very good at extending plays. Can we say that? Is there anyone that would argue that point?
No.
So, my point is just to base a performance on completion percentage is not nearly seeing the entire picture. And I just want to caution people to put too much stock in completion percentages, especially if a majority of the throws came when the game was already out of hand, a little bit out of hand.
And then last question I'll have, I can leave with you two. I'd like to hear you discuss it. Is with with Iowa's defense being top 5, top 10, and the offense being one of the worst. Does it eventually cause a rift in the locker room where the defense feels like they're holding up their end of the bargain, but the offense is just completely just kind of like, they kind of like do whatever. So does it ever cause a rift in the locker room? And if it does, like, how do you, like, what's the solution to that? But I'll get off here so you can get on, have another caller on. I'll look forward to hearing your answer.
I think with some teams it would cause a rift. I don't think it'll happen with ours, and I say that simply because one of the things that we've done really well is recruit players with very, very high character. The players understand we have a job to do. They have a job to do on the other side of the ball. It's not my position to be critical of how they do their job. That's not in my job description. My job is to be the very best I can be at the position I play. And it's important to be supportive of each other, of course. So I don't think it'll be an issue with us. I think with some teams it would be. If we had lesser character on this team, I'd be more concerned.
All right, let's get to our caller who's been on hold forever. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, gentlemen.
Oh boy, Lomansky, you've been on hold a long time, Lomansky.
Well,
we're gonna start calling you. We're gonna start calling you Longmansky.
I just want to know if Don knows you and Don have become celebrities.
Was not aware of that.
According to who?
According to me, and I have, and Don's going to love this. I don't just say that with no substantive statistics. The last time I waited 15 minutes for a performance was for Bruce Springsteen at Hilton Coliseum, and I know you'll be just as well worth the wait as Bruce Springsteen was.
Well, that is a high compliment. I was hoping you were going to say Neil Diamond if you had to wait half an hour for Neil Diamond, because he's my favorite.
I can't get to New York, Don. Otherwise, I'd probably say Neil Diamond. So I want to take a look from 10,000 feet in an airplane. And Don will relate to this because, the assistants, guys by the name of Brasher and Snyder, especially Don Patterson, never got enough credit when they followed Hayden to Iowa City. Their challenges are probably more than what Kirk Ferentz has seen. And the offensive assistants, I actually called the Iowa offices and says, blah, 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 blah. They aren't living up to the legends that have been here before. But if you go back and look at from 10,000 feet, not much changes. We had the big 2, the little 8 in 1979. And the press wrote the Iowa Hawkeyes are making people doubt it's the Big Two, the Little Eight. Well, you know what? We still got the Big Two. We still got Michigan. We still got Ohio State. We got Michigan with depth in both lines. We've got, today Eddie Podolak said they got grad students playing in the line. They got 300 pounders on the left side pounding away at our great defensive line. Don't ever think we don't have a great defensive line, but football is 3 parts. And I guess I'd like to point out that there's always possibilities. I think we haven't turned over enough rocks in the offensive unit. There's 2 guys by the name of Gordy Bohannon and Pete Gales that went to the Rose Bowl. And if you look up those stats, podcasters, they had more interceptions than offense. Of course, Don could speak to how good their offensive unit was, but they still got W's, including going to a Rose Bowl. Now, I'm going to go real specific to this part of the game that I really paid attention to. And one of them sitting beside Corey. We came out the second half. We're down 13-0. If you respect the Michigan Wolverines to the level that you should respect them, from the Big Two, Little Eight comment, you're playing the defending Big Ten champions. And I got this. I turned the sound off on the TV and listened to Podolak and Dolph. And Dolph is such a homer. I was disappointed in him today. But anyway, we come out. It's a 2-possession game. We should have hit the fire alarm button. This is the most critical drive of the whole game to me. We know we're not the better team. Corey knows we weren't the better team today, but he thought we had a shot. I did too. Thin, but a shot. And we're at home. What do? We go out there with 4 possessions and punt. And I hate to dump on him, but Peters takes a sack, and Eddie Podolak, who I really respect, he kind of went on a rant and said, you've got to throw the ball out of bounds. You can't take a sack no matter what, based on the conditions of the game. Went to 2nd and 19, and we punted. And I contend we should have pulled out a gadget, a wrinkle, and a better word for all of it is a damn exotic. I love that word, Corey. Use that word exotic all you want. But I think that drive was really crucial. And if you compare it to how this football team with Bohannon and Gales and still got it done, we're just not turning over enough rocks. But I hope people don't give up, because Michigan is the defending Big Ten champ, so we got time to fix some stuff. And I'm sure Don Peterson would be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, thinking we can fix something. I'll listen.
Well, Don, I think there's no question that first possession of the second half was huge. And one thing that I was critical of was Spencer, because this game, protection-wise, was very similar to, I thought, 2019. And Iowa continuously allowing Nate Stanley to get pressure up the middle. The difference with Nate Stanley, though, is Nate Stanley had that ability to evade pressure, even though he's a big guy, stay on his feet and throw through contact, something that Spencer has not channeled the ability to do. And I can echo some of what Lemansky just got done talking about, because I no longer, as an Iowa football fan, and that's what I am ultimately, I no longer look forward to Iowa having the football. I remember the days not that long ago, Don, where, I at halftime, I remember saying happily, hey, get the ball and start the second half. You got the ball. Now, Don, I don't even think that way. I don't think that way at all, because I have no confidence that you're going to do anything and start the second half. I would love to go back and look at the numbers, Don. And I will do this, because since we're talking about it, I would like to know what Iowa has done on the first possession of every game. Or I should say the first offensive possession of the first half and first offensive possession of the second half. I would venture to say that Iowa has scored none, no times. Now, I could be wrong on that. Maybe they scored in the first possession of the second half against Nevada, but it does seem like Iowa comes out of the gates completely sideways. And, I had a note written down here, Don, from the first half with Spencer that was just frustrating, and I actually tweeted about it. After a promising start to Iowa's second offensive drive of the game, Petrus overthrows his receiver on 3 straight plays in that first quarter. And we're talking high and hot over the heads of his tight ends. And, of course, it ended up with a punt. Does it seem like this team in general, even the defense at times, takes a little bit too long to get going? I'm not trying to be critical of the defense, but they did give up that early touchdown on a long, methodical drive for Michigan. And, boy, when you have a margin for error that's so slim with this offense, that's hard to give up. And, of course, Iowa's offense isn't helping the cause.
Yeah. In the comment at the Garden Club on Thursday, I said I would hope – here's a priority for the game. 2 words, start fast. And I'll share this with you now. I don't know that you mentioned it because you might not even be aware, Corey. But in Michigan's last 18 games, that's 14 from a year ago, plus the 4 games they played before today. In those 18 games, they scored the first touchdown. In those 18 games, 17 out of 18. 17 times they scored the first touchdown. Think about that. That sounds almost impossible to be able to do that. And after the Garden Club, I said, I will guarantee you Michigan is going to start fast. They're going to make every effort to start fast. They're going to try to hit some plays on us even on the opening series. They're going to try to have a lead in 5 minutes at the start of the game. And routinely they've done it against other people too. So we better be ready for it. And even though they were methodical in some ways on that opening drive, you do recall how they scored their touchdown. An exotic, right? They ran the reverse to score the touchdown.
Yeah.
It's a good call. So, and sure enough, they scored in 5 minutes and 7 seconds against us too. Incidentally, the one team they did not score the first touchdown against, that would be Georgia, and that would be their playoff loss, 34-11. And of course, Georgia's not your normal team. And that's why I would simply say, when we play somebody like that, to change that tendency, we have to move heaven and earth to score first. We have to have some radical thinking to be able to do it, such as maybe not 1 trick play, but 2, whatever it takes. We have to come up with some edge that we are confident is going to play for us, and let's put it out there early in the game, and let's try to gain some momentum from its effective use.
I loved your comment because I wrote down every series today. And Michigan is 46% on third down conversions this year. And the wrinkle, the exotic you're talking about, was a slot reverse. And that was their first possession when they went up 7-0. Also, Eddie Polak, on the first series, he pointed out to the listening audience, they're not huddling up. They're taking signs from the sideline to make their Michigan QB, because he was young, take the pressure off him. So they would come to the line without huddling up. He would step back and look at the sidelines for the call. And you were there, Don. You probably saw that vividly. They huddle up very few times, and he was taking his marching orders from the sidelines to clear his mind. And that just shows you, talking about your fast starts. So, we got out coached today, folks. As much as I love to make fun of Jim Harbaugh because he's so quirky, and I call him khaki pants, and he went on vacation, he called Bygone Dvorcha was the name of this famous person that his daughters knew, and he botched their names. The Michigan coaching staff out-coached ours today, and I'll hang up and listen to the show, and thanks for all you do. I love how you get me centered to what really happened, but please respect the Michigan Wolverines. Not much has changed since 1979. They're still one hell of a program.
Appreciate the call, Lemansky, as always. We've got Ryan on hold, who called earlier, and I know he wants to talk to you, but I know Ryan is a faithful listener, and I know he'll hang tight. Ryan, nod if you are willing to hang tight for a few more minutes here. I can tell you this, Don, that I am at the point where, and I tweeted about this before the game, and let me just give you my final thoughts. I know you and I had some conversations leading up to this game, but this is how I felt heading into the game. I said the Iowa staff had all offseason to design and prepare for this rematch. This is and should have always been a marked game. With that being said, I cannot imagine the offense not showing something Michigan has never seen before. Doesn't have to be a trick play, but it means there has to be plays designed exclusively for Michigan. If the Iowa offense doesn't attempt to fire a directed shot today, that's absolutely a fireable offense. I'll give Brian and Kirk the benefit of the doubt that we will see something different today. And I stand by those comments, Don. And from my vantage point, we did not fire a single directed shot. Prove me wrong.
I'm not sure that I can prove you wrong. It does cause me to flashback, Corey, and you've heard me talk about it before. I'll take you back to 1990. We were getting ready to go over and play Illinois. Illinois had a defensive coordinator that I later had the privilege of coaching with by the name of Lou Tepper. That's back in the days of the old hash marks, and they had a great field defense. And we actually spent several days in February and maybe into March. I can't remember the exact date, but we dedicated entire days to just studying Illinois' defense. The day we went to play them, they had in the previous 3 games, that was 42 possessions involving the last 3 games. They'd given up 1 touchdown. 1 touchdown in 42 possessions. That's the kind of stuff that our defense has done at times in the past. Difficult to do. So the thing we knew, we got to spend time and we got to have a solution for the Illinois defense. And we did. The plays we ran that day were tied into that film study we did way back in February and March. And it didn't have anything to do with the previous game or the following game, but it had everything to do with how to play or not play against Illinois. I'll give you a simple example. We didn't run 1 snap that day with pro to the field. Pro formation, I think everybody knows what a pro formation looks like. That would be a tight end to the field, a flanker to the field, and on the short side of the field, you would have strictly a split end, and that would be 2-back offense with a fullback and a running back. And, of course, your lineman and your tight end, I've already mentioned, to the wide field. We didn't spend 1 minute running pro to the field because they had a field defense. We ran pro into the boundary a fair amount of time. We ran slot to the field. We ran what we call line and rhino, the 1-back offense. We ran that both to the field and into the boundary. The point is we didn't line up 1 snap to give them an advantage with how they like to play. We didn't do it, not one. And I think it had everything to do with us beating them that day. And that's the game where Coach Fry made his best call ever. We went on the field. We scored 4 touchdowns in the first 4 possessions against a team that had given up 1 touchdown in 3 games. And people are wondering, what in the world is wrong with Illinois? We just had a really good plan. We weren't going to come as Ohio State had been in losing to Illinois year after year by lining up pro to the field and running the ball in the wide field. We weren't going to do that, not even once. And here's the great call that you're already aware of, Corey, but a lot of our listeners are not. On that 5th possession, they finally stopped us. But we were in Illinois territory, and it was 4th and whatever, I can't remember. But this much I do remember. We sent our place kicker on the field, and we promptly ran a fake field goal for another touchdown. And the final that day was something like 54-28. Coach Fry knew, let's keep the pedal to the metal. Let's not back off because these guys have a good offense, and we still haven't put up enough points. And that was the 5th touchdown was a fake field goal to Matt Whitaker, who was our assistant attorney general. Is that what he was here recently?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's your point. You know, you gotta spend extra time to figure out how to beat teams that you have to beat.
So did it seem like Don, from your vantage point, was there anything run in this game that from your vantage point was a play that you could tell was set aside exclusively for Michigan? Something that looked different than the norm?
I don't doubt that there was, but I can't off the top of my head identify a play that I was sure we hadn't run the entire season. I'm not sure.
Did they run an exotic? Did they run an exotic?
Well, if you want to count our fake take a knee, I guess.
No,
you don't
I'm not
count
counting
that.
that nonsense, Don. I'm not counting it.
Well, if you don't count that, then I guess the answer would be no.
Okay. I said it's a fireable offense. That's what I said pregame. That's my opinion. I stand by. I said that before it happened. So I'm not just reacting to what I saw. I said that before it happened. I think it's inexcusable. This should have been a marked game. They should have, Kirk, and I don't know if he's this type of a rah-rah guy, Don, but I don't think there's any reason why you wouldn't bring up the fact that Michigan ran up the score on you last year and you got beat by 39. You got embarrassed. And I didn't see anything in this game that made me think that they were attempting to make amends, so to speak. Or I don't like the word revenge because this is sports, and I think it's a awfully harsh word. But you get what I'm saying, Don. And that just frustrates me to no end. Let's get to Ryan, who's been on hold for quite some time. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks, Coach Patterson, for being here. Kind of a tough day. I don't think we have enough of a running game yet. We were something like 3 yards a carry if you take out Spencer's Statue of Liberty sacks. What I guess couple things I want to say is, number one, I'm going to be really interested to see at the end of the year what Iowa's defense, giving 14 or more up, what our final record will be. Secondly, Arlen Bruce, 2 catches, 7 yards. I mean, I think this guy, and I say this word every time I call in, playmaker. He can be a playmaker. Now, they did a great job with Lachey, no question about it. And they had success with the stretch play. So, Coach Patterson, I know you got relationships with the staff, and I respect that. What would you be willing to say that you're willing, to share in what maybe you would have done different? Because I'm telling you what, we do not. Arlen Bruce is a 4-star. Sam Laporte is going to go to the NFL. Luke Lachey has the potential. Keegan Johnson, I mean, if he stays 4 years here and we decide to use him the way he should be, I mean, I'm just saying, I get it. We're, the worst defense in the country. People don't respect it. We have more talent. I just can't help but say, you look on paper, go to rivals.com recruiting lists. We still have plenty of quote unquote stars. Where am I wrong? I think it's just frustrating when you're looking at so many games that with an average offense, 75, whatever, you could still be pretty bulletproof.
Don,
well, the first thing that comes to mind for me would be what Michigan did early in the game with McCarthy. There were a lot of very, very high percentage throws. I'm typically talking about swing passes where they're throwing the ball behind the line, typically to number 2, I guess, but the other back is also good. And they're simply blocking downfield, which they're legal to do, of course, because the ball's thrown and caught behind the line of scrimmage. Arlen Bruce can do that stuff. Let's get Arlen the ball in space and give him a chance to run. And it doesn't have to be way down the field. It can be a much, much higher percentage play. We can do things like that more than what we do. And I thought Michigan was a good example of that. In the first part of the game, they gave their young quarterback a chance to get comfortable because he was completing pass after pass after pass. A lot of them were not difficult throws, but it was a way for them to build his comfort level in the course of the game. And I think it was a smart thing to do.
I thought also one of the biggest problems we have, and I try my best not to rip on Spencer too much. I don't remember, as I said earlier tonight, I don't know when we had 246 yards passing. A lot of that came against a softer Michigan defense, but still, we need a quarterback that doesn't panic. And, look back at the first play of the second half. We got a 9-yard loss, and he could have, if we had, I guess he can't, but if we had a quarterback that could just make a couple stutter stops and get out of the way, the guy absolutely passes him. The play's alive. I felt like Spencer panics, and he tucked it, took the 9-yard loss. He didn't throw an interception, but get rid of it. That's got to be practiced. When you're got pressure like a Michigan, you're going to see that. You got to know what to do in the heat of the moment. Where am I wrong?
Corey, I'll let you start with that commentary there.
Wrong, Ryan.
I guess you're going to accuse me of being an expert.
Yeah, the lack of mobility and Spencer's lack of pocket awareness. And those are all problems. And that's why I said earlier in the show, it's frustrating. These are things we shouldn't be talking about 3 years into a tenure as a quarterback. And that's why I think a lot of fans, to put it simply, Ryan, a lot of fans are just done with Spencer. And I hate that. I feel bad for Spencer Petras because I have no doubt that Spencer Petras is an exceptional person. We've said that a million times. And that's why I almost feel bad for him, because the coaches continue to play him, because he wants to play. He's not going to take himself out of the game. I know Kirk's not going to do it. I just think it's time to change.
No way.
It's time to change. And
what incentive does Kirk have today? Is Gary Barta going to hand him a terrible performance review for, our offensive ranking?
Well,
I know that that's the official line of succession, right?
I guess what I'm saying, Ryan, is that Kirk, if Kirk cares about, and Kirk, we've said this a million times too, Kirk is a genuine good human being.
Of course.
I think his
No
values right now, I think his priorities right now are a little bit misguided as it relates to this football program and his son. I think he's misguided right now, but I think he's a very good human being who cares about his guys.
There also needs to be, in my opinion, Coach Patterson, I'm 47. I go back to 1982, Owen Gill, first year Chuck Long, all of that. I was told going into kindergarten, if I'm not a Hawkeye, find another family to live with. And, I'm a 1998 grad. I live in the inferior state of Illinois, and I love coming back to Iowa City every time. That being said, this is really kind of getting bad, and we do deserve to feel like we have a chance on either side of the ball.
Well, here's what I was going to say, Ryan. Let me finish my thought here. So even though I believe Kirk is a genuine person who cares about his guys, what I'm saying is because of that, I would urge Kirk to just take some good long thought to the situation at quarterback right now and the criticism that Spencer is getting. And I don't think this was Spencer's worst game, Don.
No.
The third quarter, regardless of the reason, I thought he made some nice plays in the third quarter, but the overall product is still not even close to where it needs to be. And the offense doesn't seem to be moving real close to being. I understand Michigan's defense is the best Iowa has faced, but this offense has not made any big jumps from week 1 to week 5. And so I guess my point is, if I'm Kirk, I'm looking and saying, I really don't want to continue to throw Spencer to the wolves. Let's just see what we got with these other guys for the sake of Spencer, for the sake of my backups, for the sake of the fans, for the sake of my son. I think it's a win-win-win-win all the way around, Don. And I know that Kirk would probably, or I'm sure Spencer wouldn't think that him sitting on the bench would be a win-win. But for right now, it might be the best move. And let's not wait to the bye week to entertain this. Let's do it now when we've got a somewhat winnable game at Illinois, because guess what? You know who's coming? You know where we're going after Illinois? We got a trip out to Columbus. You ain't gonna have much fun in the shoe going up against that offense. So I think that's the big thing. If you care about Spencer, and I know that Kirk Ferentz does, I don't think you're doing him any favors by continuing to bring him out in the field. I mean, Don, he's gotten booed in every single home game this season. Isn't that just? I'm not saying it's wrong for the fans to do it. I'm not saying it's right for the fans to do it. But isn't it sad that that's happening?
Yes, it is.
I hate that it's happening. I hate that for everybody involved. And so, I just that would be my one thing with Kirk. I just hope that he considers that. But I've been saying that for weeks. Ryan.
Hey, Coach, what would you do different to attack Michigan today versus what we did, if I can ask that?
As Coach I would say, start the game by letting them out of shoot number one. You have to be aggressive with your play calling early on, because if you're able to get the first score against Michigan, now you've really dealt them a blow, because they're not used to not scoring first. The only time it happened in the last 18 games, they lost the game. So if you can score first, you got a chance. But you better not play from behind, because you're not going to be able to pull it off. Neither you or any other large group of teams. You know, you're not going to pull it off against Michigan, because they're not going to give up anything cheap. They're not going to turn the ball over either. They didn't turn it over, not even once today. And it's not that we weren't trying to generate turnovers. We're trying to, but they do a good job protecting the ball just like we do. So that was the push today. You got to be aggressive from the start. You know, as I said earlier, Ryan, maybe you didn't hear me say it, but I said before the game, I said, we'll know about our chance first time we get to 2nd and 1 or 2nd and 2. If we run the ball for a first down, we're likely to lose. If we go play action and actually use that waist down, we're going to beat them. And 2nd and 2, I think, was the first waist down, and we ran the ball. And then a little bit later, 2nd and 1, we ran the ball again. And right then I was getting discouraged, because I knew we're not getting out of our comfort zone to beat somebody like Michigan. We have to do that. We have to take advantage of waist downs and see if we can hit something big.
So, Coach, is it fair for me as just a fan who is not the offensive coordinator for a Hall of Fame college football coach? I'm just going to flat out ask, is it fair for us to be very upset and concerned about that side of the ball?
I would say if you're not concerned about our play on offense, then you're not much of an Iowa fan. And I know that our fans are concerned, and it's not that they're not concerned about being as good as we can be on defense or in the kicking game either. The reality is that we've come closer to outstanding results on those two aspects of the game than we have on offense. The offense has been more of the problem.
Well, your answer right there provides why this is the best show in the country for Iowa football and basketball, for that matter. So thank you, guys.
Appreciate that, Ryan.
Thanks for just Coach Patterson for being very honest, and I wish you were here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. All right, we've got a couple callers, and then we're going to call it a night, because it's been a 3-hour marathon once again. But I want to kind of go rapid fire through our chat before we get to our final couple of callers. And, of course, we'll have coverage throughout the week as we lead up to the Illinois game. JT, the offensive line is young. That excuse cannot be used anymore. I've heard that for 4 years now. Jim, how much longer can this offense be acceptable? Lemansky, appreciate the super chat. Send me in Brian Ferentz. I can take a sack without throwing it away with the utmost entertainment value. I, too, am immobile. Thank you, Lemansky. Appreciate that. And
Has Lemansky been tailgating today?
Yeah. Don Patterson's biggest fan says, appreciate the super chat. do you change up the QB and O-line next week? I've been advocating for a QB change for weeks now, Don, but as far as the O-line is concerned, do you just continue to shuffle like they're doing until you find something that strikes gold?
My guess is Coach Barnett probably has a better idea now than he did before the game today of which guard deserves more playing time. I think he's zeroing in on it. It wouldn't shock me if he truly identified a starting 5 instead of a starting 7, you could say. I think the reps have been very even at guard, maybe involving as many as 4 guards. Is that right, Corey? I believe 4 at least.
Yeah.
So my guess is you might see a split, maybe even as early as next week. Obviously, he's got to have a clear impression in his mind as to who deserves more snaps and who deserves fewer. But I think we're getting a little bit closer to identifying our best players with each passing game. That's only logical. And I can guarantee you, Coach Burnett spent hours and hours and hours evaluating those 66 snaps we had today. Maybe we didn't have 66. How many did we have? I forget. Somebody had 66. Maybe it was Michigan. Do you have the numbers in front of you, Corey?
Yeah, I do. Where's that number, Don?
I think Michigan had 66, more I think about it. And we had something less.
Let's see, 24. I have to add them together here. 24 plus 42. Yeah, 66 for Michigan.
And we're in the 50s again.
Iowa had, let's see, 31 plus
24.
24. Yeah, good call.
55 snaps. Yeah. Not enough, of course. The team that takes the most snaps generally wins the game too, of course. And we've had difficulty staying on the field with our offense and too much difficulty getting off the field with our defense. Our defense has played admirably week after week. But obviously today they were really tested because Michigan's offense is I put Blake Corum up against any running back we'll see all season. He's an outstanding back. I thought their offensive line did a good job of winning the edge up there. I think they had a good surge, especially in the first half. We were behind the chains for most of that first half. Had a hard time getting off the field. And frankly, thanks for good red zone defense, we forced them into a couple of field goals. That was a key point in the game when it was 10-0 and they had a chance to go up by 17. We were able to hold them again. And they hit another field goal, which I think was almost wide, incidentally. I thought it was wide from where I was sitting. It must have been really close.
No, it was good. Both of them were very close, Don.
Were they? Yeah, they appeared to be. It's hard to tell unless you're right there behind the uprights, I'll admit. But that was a key play because 13-0 is still a 2-score game. 17-0, of course, is now 3 scores, and it's that much more difficult to be able to pull it off, especially if you haven't scored yet. So I give our defense credit for fighting hard to make it a 13-point margin at the half. And then I give our offense credit for not giving up toward the end of the game, for still fighting for that last score, even though it didn't have any real effect on the outcome of the game, of course. But at least it was an indication that we weren't about to give up. And I think that's a good sign that our offense fought hard. Even though they were down, they fought hard to at least be able to say that they gave it a great effort all the way through.
Let me just say this, Don. One thing we're not getting anything out of compared to last year, we're not getting anything out of punt return. And we're not getting anything out of kick return right now.
You're right. We miss Charlie Jones, don't we?
Well, I'm not allowed to say that, Don.
Oh, okay. Well, I take it back then.
We can't say that. That's YouTube will shut us down if we say Charlie Jones. Erica Goldberg. This is, I believe, a different Erica Goldberg than the Erica Goldberg that's typically a part of this show. So Erica says, I thought Brian Ferentz called a good game. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Ask Erica if she knows what a waist down is, because apparently she doesn't.
Don, can I just say this? Not to toot my own horn, but I'm going to do it for a second. I've been on the whole waist down thing for a long, long time, and we're seeing this. Continuing. So, but thank you for the super chat, Erica, number 2. Erica brings out, yes, this isn't a different person. So, DC Hawkeye, thank you for the super chat. This was a while ago. Thank you for the super chat, DC Hawkeye. The situation is so obvious to everyone The AD needs to step in and remove Brian, period. Jason says, again, thank you, DC Hawkeye, for that. Jason says, Don, why does it seem coaches would rather lose their way instead of making adjustments to the personnel they have?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Erica number one, thank you for becoming a member. And for anybody who wants to become a member, you can do so by clicking the join button next to From the Hawkeye of the Storm on the app. Or if you don't see it on your Apple iPhone, you can certainly go to the desktop version or the browser version and click join next to From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Ben says we'll see Michigan again this year. I guess he's predicting that Iowa still wins the West. Don, your thoughts with a struggling Wisconsin and a Minnesota team that lost today? I don't see Iowa winning the West with this offense, Don.
Our only focus should be on finding a way to beat Illinois.
Very true. How about this, Don?
Wow, that sounds impossible. Does that mean Wisconsin's back was injured?
Braylon Allen, I think, got hurt, but Chaz Malusi, you would think, would be a decent replacement. 2 rushing yards, Don, for Wisconsin today.
Tells me there's quite a bit of sack yardage in there, I bet.
That's a good question. Let me find the answer to that. Again, 34-10 was the final score. Illinois over Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Chaz Malusi, 7. We just lost our caller who was on hold. Sorry, caller. We were getting to you. Malusi, 7 carries for 16 yards. Braylon Allen, 8 carries for 2 yards. Graham Mertz, 7 carries for negative 22 yards. So really not that many sack yards, Don.
Yeah, only 22 on the part of the quarterback. Total, minus 22. I assume they were all sacks that contributed to that minus number.
Caller, I'm going to put you on hold. You're still here with us. And let's see. Before we get to our next caller, again, we're trying to go rapid fire through here. Erica, who is one of our new premium subscribers, she says, it seems to me there are many issues with the refs across the conference. Is that accurate? Don, have you noticed that?
You know, it seems to me some weeks, I know one of the referees really well. He used to be in the Missouri Valley Conference when I coached in that league. I think in my mind, I think he's perceived maybe as the best referee in the conference. He does a lot of the big games. His name's Ron Snodgrass. I think some crews are better than others. And I don't even know exactly how the crews are formed. They do work as a team. Typically, the same crew that worked one game one weekend will work another game the next weekend. And in rare cases, of course, they might have to replace a guy because of some kind of illness or whatnot. But some crews are excellent. Other crews, I think, are less than that. I won't say they're below acceptable standards. I won't go that far. I do think it's difficult to call a football game with great precision. It requires everybody doing their job really well. And if one official makes a bad call, of course, it really reflects on all of them. So, but we know how officiating goes. Sometimes you get a break here and there. Other times the breaks go against you. And you have to be good enough to overcome a bad official's call. I'll say this. I think there were very few times I ended up coaching in 425 games. I thought there were very few cases in which the officials actually affected the outcome of the game. Maybe 1 out of 100 games. So in 37 years of coaching, 4 or 5 games I thought for sure were affected by the poor officiating done for that particular game. And that's tragic when that happens. It doesn't happen very often.
All right. Again, appreciate everybody being here and commenting in our chat. Kelly says, sorry if I asked already, but how many more losses until our third quarterback gets a look? I have the answer for that, unfortunately, Kelly. M. Finn, the offensive line was bad last year. It was a bad year before that. The year before that, it hasn't been good in quite a while. With the exception of 2020, it was actually really good in 2020, Don, but it was a COVID year. Hard to really weigh how much importance you place on that year in general. Joby Clausen, in my humble opinion, I agree Corey and Don are right about Iowa needing to do play action on waste downs like second and short. Iowa's top 2 deep threats from last year didn't play today. Charlie Jones and Keegan Johnson. It's funny. I'm not saying Joby's saying this, but so many fans, Don, so many fans in the spring after Charlie Jones left said he wasn't going to play anyways. He wasn't a good enough receiver. He wasn't going to see the field, Don. He was buried on the depth chart.
Yeah, I think you can pull up some old tape where I indicated I thought Charlie was our most reliable receiver.
You and me both, Don. Erica, we are tight end you for a reason. Good to see Lachey play well today, Don. He has not been as involved as you'd expect him to be. He had a good day. Doc P, thank you for this compliment. He says he enjoys the channel. Thank you for being here. He adds, can Don answer why Petrus consistently overthrows even when he's not pressured? We've talked about this, Don, right? It's all fundamentals and transferring that weight to the front foot. And even on the Lachey throw down the seam, boy, that throw was off his back foot, Don, and he was fortunate he got it there because you're not going to be consistent throwing the football unless you can consistently shift that weight to that front foot, correct?
Yeah, you've heard me talk about developing a grooved throwing motion. It's no different than a golfer or a pitcher in baseball. You know, you've got to be so consistent with your mechanics that the ball's on target every time or close to it. I would just invite you to take a look. Pick your favorite quarterback tomorrow when the NFL starts up. Or I can think of a few that come to mind. To me, one of the best examples is Aaron Rodgers. That ball, if you can envision what his target should be on a particular throw, that ball is generally within a foot of the prime place for the pass to be completed. That's how accurate some NFL quarterbacks are. But it all starts with the same mechanics over and over again. There are a few exceptions, like Mahomes comes to mind. He can throw the ball out of all different body positions and still has a knack for putting it on target. But the classic passers like Brady and Aaron Rodgers come to mind in particular. The guy that plays for the Rams, I guess, is a good example, right? He's another one that comes to mind. He's an excellent quarterback. They can throw the ball with great accuracy because that throwing motion is the same virtually every snap of the game.
All right, let's get to our caller who's been on hold here, and we'll get to Thomas. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey. Hey, Coach P. It's Erica Goldberg. How's it going?
Erica number 1 or Erica number 2?
This is Erica number 1, the original Erica.
The original.
Just wanted to establish that off
The
the bat,
original.
Erica.
Erica,
Yeah,
for
no,
what it's worth, I don't think the other Erica is the new and improved Erica. I'd still go with you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So just a few quick comments that I wanted to make about the game today. Actually, first I'll start with a question. It seemed to me that we didn't go as hard on the Michigan quarterback as we should have. Like we didn't get enough pressure on him. Now, is that because our defense wasn't playing up to Iowa standards, or is that because Michigan has such a good O-line that they're able to block their quarterback efficiently, unlike us?
Don, can I give my opinion before you tell me if I'm
Sure.
right or wrong? When you're gouging the defense for 7 yards a carry, you're probably not going to be able to consistently. You're probably not going to be able to get to the quarterback schematically, right? You're not going to bring more than 4 guys. I mean, there were very few obvious passing situations, anyways, in that first quarter.
Yeah, you're right. The best way to have a good pass rush, of course, is to be able to know with confidence that it's going to be a pass. Then you can tee off as a pass rusher, be more effective. The other thing that comes to mind, sometimes creative pass rushes might involve you actually giving up a gap. And when I say it that way, because of number 2 at running back, he's got such good vision. I'm sure one of our priorities going into today's game, we have to be gap sound. By that I mean, you know what I mean, Corey? There's an A gap, a B gap, a C gap. A gap is simply defined as the gap between the center and the guard on either side. The B gap is the gap between the guard and the tackle. And then the C gap is between the tackle and the tight end, if there is a tight end. You better have those gaps covered, because if there's an exposed gap, he's going to find it, he's going to hit it. And he had a lot of good runs today, even though we were trying to be gap sound. And the only negative about trying to be gap sound is that maybe we force ourselves to be a little more predictable with how we're rushing if it happens to be a pass. It's all about getting ahead of the chains. If they're ahead of the chains, advantage to the offense. If they're looking at long yardage, now the advantage swings our way.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think I'm coming in behind again, like before. I don't know what's causing the issue. I apologize, guys.
Well, you're good. You're not that far
But
behind.
okay, good. So the other thing I was gonna comment on or ask, I think we're getting into dangerous territory here with Kirk, and by that, what I mean is it's gonna end up being that he kind of leaves dishonorably and he outstays his welcome. Because if offenses keep looking like this while he's still here, he's just eventually going to be, I don't want to say kicked out the door because they've made it clear they're not going to kick him out of the door, but it's just going to be, his reputation will be wrecked, which would be such a shame because he's done so much for this Iowa team. So I was wondering where you think we are in that spectrum. Do you think we're getting there? Do you think that it's just starting to feel that way? Or what do you guys think about that?
I have the same fear that you do, Erica. I don't think we're close. As I think some fans are close to feeling that, but I think ultimately, like we said earlier, it's the big money people, and I really don't have a feel for how they are. Now, if Iowa goes 6-6, 5-7, there will be pressure. Don, can we agree on that? I mean, I'm not asking you if you think there should be pressure, but I think the reality is if Iowa goes 5-7 or 6-6, there will be pressure, and that might be the only thing that could possibly cause movement on the coaching staff. Do I think Kirk Ferentz is going to resign? No. Am I advocating for him to resign? No. Can you hear me, Don?
I do now, yeah. You froze up there for a second.
What I'm saying is I'm not advocating for Kirk Ferentz to resign. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm just saying if they go 5-7 or 6-6, there will be, I would have to think there are going to be some people who matter that will be upset. And I'm not saying it's going to be enough, but I think that's probably, if you are one advocating for change, that's probably what it's going to take, Erica.
I think it would tie into the circumstances behind that 5-7 or 6-6. If our numbers are still really poor all the way through the season on offense, there'll be more pressure than there otherwise would be. It's conceivable, of course, our numbers will change a lot over the latter 7 games of the regular season. Maybe we aren't able to win for some other reason. Maybe we have serious injuries that compromise our efforts either in the kicking game or the way our defense performs. I hate to think that that'll enter into it, but it depends on the circumstances behind a record that might be on or around 500. It depends on are we competitive in every last game and still lost a lot of one-score games. That's different, of course, than being beaten by 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Okay. I think that's pretty much all I have for today. To be honest, I'm kind of beaten down because this game was just I wasn't sure who would win walking into this. I'm not saying I thought Iowa would necessarily win, but I thought it was anybody's game. And I just feel like we had a very poor showing today. So I'm kind of a little disappointed. And I think that's true for a lot of people here. So anyway, thank you for taking my call and have a great evening. Thanks, guys.
Thanks as always, Erica.
Thanks, Erica.
Dave, great show, Corey and Don. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Dave. Steve wants a blue star. As Erica brings out here, if you want a blue star and you want to be a premium subscriber, you can hit the join button to join the channel. Would certainly be much appreciated and help support the channel. Lemansky with the super chat. Corey, I can help. I will call Barta and say waist down is not thrown at the belly button. Lemansky putting in the long hours today. Casey, will the show next week be on Sunday since Illinois is a late game? No, I don't think so, Don. We're going to be on after the Illinois game, right?
I'm prepared. Lisa's going to be at the game with her sorority sisters.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to be here watching the game on TV. Be here in Iowa City.
Perfect.
I'll be available after the game.
John says, would you call the fake kneel down an exotic?
You've already answered that, Corey. You've already said no, it's not.
Okay. I'm sure
you got high standards for your exotics.
And Don P or Doc P, I'm sorry, you're Don P. Doc P says, how many yards did Charlie Jones get today? And let me see if I can find the answer to that question. So Purdue, as you know, beat Minnesota 20-10. And Charlie Jones ended up with 6 receptions for 55 yards to lead the team. And by the way, that would have led Iowa's receivers. I think that would have led Iowa's receivers in any game this year, Don. I don't think there's been a single game where a wide receiver has totaled 55 yards.
You may be right. I don't know.
Steve says, Coach, whatever happened to the scratch where it itches philosophy?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Mansky says, go ahead, Don.
I'm just going to say your point's well taken. You got to keep exploring. Keep try something different. Try something different. Just keep searching. And usually before the game plays out, you end up eventually finding something that'll work. And Coach Fry was notorious for saying, he had an old expression, milk it's dry. He didn't want to hear a coach after the game say, oh, I wish we'd have just run that play a few more times. He wasn't going to do that. I'll give you a simple example that we were very familiar with as coaches. If the play was good, let's imagine it was a pro right formation and we ran the ball to the right for good yardage. Coach Fry, one of the things he'd like to do is simply flip the formation over and run the same play to the other side of the field. He did that any number of times. I think some defensive staffs knew that, and maybe that helped them to defend it the second time. But his argument for doing it so quickly is they don't even have a chance to correct what went wrong on the previous play. So there is an element of truth to what he did. That was just one way of him continuing to use that same play. Typical comment at halftime, Coach Fry wanted to know which plays paid off for us in the first half. Let's not overlook. I wish I had $1 every time Bill Brazier said, thank God they didn't come back to that because we didn't have a good answer. Sometimes teams forget about good plays. We like to think we never did because we discussed them always at halftime. And for that matter, even in the course of either half. If something's working for you, find a way to get back to it. Don't forget about it.
Lomansky with the super chat. Don Patterson and Corey get exotic pizzas. They are the best.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Yeah, I did. I got made fun of earlier this week because I kept using the word exotic on our Michigan show. But ironically enough, I don't think Iowa ran a single exotic. Ryan says this is the best podcast that calls it how it is without fear of repercussions from the egotistical dictator. Well, I appreciate the compliment, Ryan, and appreciate you being here. Certainly appreciate it. Phil Parker's paw says, for Don and Corey, is Kirk Ferentz afraid that Padilla is actually going to succeed? And that puts Kirk Ferentz in a difficult spot, having to finally acknowledge his original choice was a bad one. Again, I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but I think we're all in the same opinion that it would not be bad to at least utilize what you have behind Spencer to see if you have someone who's a gamer. Oatmeal for life. Don, have you ever seen a head coach besides Kirk be so reluctant to play backup quarterbacks? Is it reluctance, Don, or what do you think it is with Kirk? Is it just a genuine belief that he actually believes that Spencer is their best option?
I think Kirk assuredly does feel that Spencer's the best quarterback they have. But sometimes, of course, it's hard to know until other players are given a similar opportunity. This year, no one else has been given an opportunity, of course, on game day. And for that reason, we don't know for sure what Alex or Joe might be able to do.
Tyler, do you think Spencer will exercise his COVID year? I do not. I doubt he comes back, Don. I mean, if he does, I'll be shocked. And frankly, the staff has to welcome him back. He doesn't have to come back, even if he wants to. So we'll see on that. Jason says, Coach, that's why we have so many issues with Wisconsin, Northwestern, Purdue. We run the same stuff no matter who we play. Is there some truth to that at times, Don?
There might be. I'll give you an example. You might say, well, we're running a lot of different plays, but the more appropriate question is, within each formation, how many plays do we run? Are we predictable based on specific formations? Because a good defensive coach or a good defensive player will identify out of this particular formation. In some cases, he might be able to say, out of this particular formation, they've only run 3 plays. And he might know what all 3 of them are. And if that's all you've ever run out of that formation, you can bet that they're going to be able to defend those 3 plays really well. So that's why there's an argument for expanding the offense over the course of the season, because you don't want them to have a good idea of what's coming before the ball's ever snapped.
Want to give everybody a scoreboard update here. Of course, we know Michigan defeating Iowa 27-14. Purdue over number 21 Minnesota in Minneapolis 20-10. And I still think Purdue might be the team to beat in the Big Ten, even though people were jumping on that Minnesota bandwagon. Purdue's only got the one loss, and it was a close one to Penn State. Illinois over Wisconsin 34-10, and Iowa gets the Illini next week. Right now, Maryland beating Michigan State 27-13 in the fourth quarter. Ohio State over Rutgers 49-10 in the fourth quarter. So much for that real staunch Rutgers defense. And Penn State leading Northwestern 17-7 in the fourth quarter. And Don, you have a lot of respect for Mel Tucker, but what in the world?
It's amazing how it's fallen apart just in a matter of a few weeks. I don't know what's going on at Michigan State. It makes me wonder if there's maybe something going on within the team itself. Maybe if there's some kind of fractured element within the team, something crazy like that. It's hard to explain that they would change so much for the worst in a short amount of time.
Number 2 Alabama leading number 20 Arkansas 42-23 in the fourth quarter. Number 9 Oklahoma State leading number 16 Baylor 36-25 late in the fourth. Number 22 Wake Forest leading number 23 Florida State 28-21 late in the fourth. Iowa State trailing Kansas 14-11 with just 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter.
Wow.
North Carolina leading Virginia Tech 41-10. Texas A&M, number 17 in the country, trailing Mississippi State 21-10. And then, of course, we know some of the results earlier. TCU with the 31-point upset of number 18 Oklahoma. Number 14 Ole Miss over number 7 Kentucky 22-19. How about Adrian Martinez and the Wildcats of Kansas State? Now number 25 in the country, beating Texas Tech 37-28. Louisville falling to Boston College 34-33. And number 12, Utah beating Oregon State 42-16. And, of course, some games still on the docket. Vincent, a couple final questions here. We went way over our time slot. He says, Corey and Coach Patterson, does this type of offense this season run the risk of losing your players due to the outside noise and lack of production? If so, what can you do to counter that? I'm going to leave that question up for you, Don.
I don't know how to answer it because I simply don't know. I don't know how much attention players pay to what people say. My guess is I'm sure it's recommended to them, don't spend time watching talk shows or reading what sports writers might write. Let's just understand that we're all in this together. We have to find a way to solve our problems, and let's not be divided by what somebody might write or someone might say.
Phil Parker's Pa. Don, who enters the portal first this winter if Petrus comes back for a COVID year, Johnson or Bruce? I hope none of them enter the portal, but I do think it's a risk, whether or not you want to blame that on the quarterback, Don. I do think this offense and the lack of performance, boy, that hurts recruiting. And with the transfer portal, it's easy for guys to leave. So that continues to be a concern. And Ray, I appreciate the compliment from you and your graciousness towards Michigan and the Michigan fans. And I appreciate the Michigan fans here who have been good sports during this post-game show. Let me see if I can speak. I know not all of you like me, but appreciate some of you being gracious about the win. Lemansky says, when you give Corey the ball, he runs with it like Caleb the Great. Okay. We're going to go rapid fire. 2 last callers are on hold. I'm cutting it off after there. All right. So Thomas, Austin, these are going to be quick calls. I know you've been waiting a while, but we have to wrap this thing up. We've been on a long, long time. Thomas.
Hey guys.
I'm with Coach Patterson. How are you?
Hey, so that last penalty call, I swear to God, when they got the grad in the circle, I'm just like thinking, they're sitting there thinking, oh no, what are we gonna call? We called it. We threw the flag. What are we going to call? And it's just like checking it off because it just seems like they were stacked against it, right? The commentators never said who it was on, what it was on. They said what it was, but every replay we saw, it didn't look like a pass interference to me. There wasn't any ball near any defender to call pass interference on an offensive player. Right?
Well, did they not call it? Was it called a pick play, Don? Was that what the call technically was
Yeah,
for?
it was an offensive interference. And the tragedy there is that the reception still left us short on 4th down, right? We didn't have the first down anyway.
Right.
It was a poor throw on Spencer's part.
Oh, it was a bad throw, Don, and people are getting after Laporta for not running the 2-yard out. I think it's a bad play call, because there's no guarantee even if he catches it in stride that he's going to get the first down, but at least give it to him so that he has a chance to power through for the first down. You put it down on his feet, the play's over.
Right. It's all he can do to catch it. And, of course, he can't stay on his feet because he had to dig it off the ground.
All right. And then I actually thought Petrus, I saw some flashes in that second half. So why not start next week under the same, don't give him time to think. Just go, go, go. He seemed to actually do well when you took that element out. You know what I mean?
Well, again, I think we said this earlier, Thomas. You got to weigh the fact of how Michigan was defending him in the third quarter, and
I'm talking about before we got to that penalty when he's just marching down the field. I don't care how Michigan was defending him. He just seemed to be on the go. So maybe we need to start the game off like that. Try something. If you're going to keep Petrus in, then you might as well try something new, right? Change the pace of it.
Well, I'm all for that. I'm all for trying something new.
Now, what you're saying with some of those throws, you'd have to classify that as a more aggressive case of play calling, right? We're throwing the ball down the field, making some throws that are 15, 20 yards. And you're right. That's something that I think Spencer throws a lot of those balls better than he does some of the shorter stuff. So you're right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with us hitting a lot of those intermediate routes. I realize there's a chance they'll be intercepted, but you can't cross the street without paying attention to the traffic too. So we just got to give him credit for recognizing where the defenders are and being put the ball in a good spot.
And I have two other things. One, don't sleep on Illinois. Bielema has changed the culture there, and Bielema has had a track record of having our number before. Right?
Yeah.
If any coach out there in the Big Ten can beat us,
I think the bigger question is there any possibility Illinois will sleep on Iowa? That's the bigger question.
Yeah. And then lastly, our defense. Whatever happened to our Raider packages? Right? And why don't we pressure he's a young quarterback. Why not throw some pressure in?
On third down and obvious passing situations, Don? That's an interesting question.
Because whenever we did that the last few years, whenever we've done that, it has done, it's done something to the offensive line where it throws them off. And we've had a lot of success with them. Now it's like we haven't done a single one in like this whole year, it seems like.
Well, I think today one reason is I think we had a lot of concern about their running backs carrying the ball. That's why I said we had to be careful with the way we rushed the quarterback, because if we left a lane open, if we left a gap open, invariably those backs are good enough to find that gap. And I think that was part of our concern, is them having the capacity even on third and long to run a draw play and pick up good yardage, because those backs are certainly way above average.
But isn't that one of the solutions to you're the coach. You tell me if I'm wrong. Isn't that one of the solutions to those holes is to throw extra men at the line, blitz, fill those gaps, and get after the quarterback? And even if it is a one-on-one for our DBs, isn't the possibility of somebody getting to the quarterback could give us the more opportunity for a turnover?
That would be true if the quarterback was not very mobile. You got to realize McCarthy's got the skill to get out of tough spots, and at that point you're really in trouble if he's able to break contain. And now you've got man coverage all over the place. Then when you hit a receiver, if he's open for the play, of course, if that one defender doesn't make the play, then the race is on. We don't like to play that way. Our strength, of course, is to play zone, keep the ball in front of us, be sound with our tackling. That's the key to our success in preventing big plays. And I think we're worried about a situation in which the quarterback hits a receiver. Now the race is on. We didn't want those kind of plays.
Thomas, appreciate your call, sir. I got to let you slide because we're coming up on 3.5 hours.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call. and we throw in Austin for the final call of the night. Austin, how you doing, buddy?
In the interest of trying to keep things moving, I'll kind of skip the how do you do's, but I got a comment and a question. My comment, I know everyone has kind of had some questions about referees tonight. As a comment, we were at the game. We sit in the O section, if that makes sense for the IOWAs. To me, as far as ignoring some of the calling anyway, just sort of ref mentality and ref behavior that I observed, every time the flag bearers came out to do the IOWA, the ref was in the end zone telling the O flag bearer that he had to get out of the end zone. I'm not sure if anyone else noticed that, but it seemed like every time he was picking out and telling the O that he had to leave. So I think twice he took a step back while all the others were going, which I found very odd behavior from a referee. So think of that what you would. My question, though, mostly probably for Don, is going to be, what would it take, or would it even be a thing that would cross the mind of Kirk Ferentz to come out and say, okay, this year we're looking poor, we're going to redirect, and we very well may lose some games here. We very well may lose, but we're going to redirect and put plans in for a future. So had we lost to Rutgers,
Austin, you got to repeat that. You kind of cut out completely there for a minute. You can you repeat your question? You cut out.
Sorry, my phone after the wait is down.
I've lost him.
Now we've lost you. Now we've lost you completely, Austin. We've lost you completely. We've completely lost. Here, I'm gonna see if you can fix that issue, Austin, because I know you waited here for a while, but we cannot hear you at all now. So maybe refresh the page, see if that will help us out, and we can get your call in while we're waiting to see if Austin can fix those issues. And again, I hope everybody appreciates the fact that Don has been here for 2 hours. Don, I appreciate it. Over 2 hours. And again, we know that there have been a lot of people who have donated. I want to extend appreciation to those people. If you're interested in donating by Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, you can do so in the description below. There are links for Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal. You can also sponsor the show by emailing me from the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. That's from the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. This coming Wednesday, Hawkeye Hangout Live Edition, 9 p.m. Myself and you, the caller, you, the listener, will be talking Illinois, talking about Iowa. I'm sure the offense will come up. Wouldn't be shocked if the Iowa offense comes up again, but we'll be taking your calls, and it'll be another good time on Hawkeye Hangout right here and from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So if you haven't already done so, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Austin, do we have you back?
I hope so. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Clear now.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry,
No
my phone hit 2%, so I switched to the computer. No camera, but better microphone.
You're good.
My question, this is going to be mostly for Don. What would it take? Let's say in a hypothetical unfortunate universe, let's say maybe we lost to Rutgers last week. We lost to Michigan this week. What would it take for Kirk to come out and say, okay, we clearly have an overhaul to do. We're going to start this overhaul now. Fans, be patient. What would it take for them to come to say we're going to lose games, but the priority right now already is building a better team for next season? Would that ever be something feasible or no?
That's a scenario I can't imagine playing out, to be honest with you.
Okay, so it's never going to be a point where we're going to just take a waste year or a building year, I guess, a full stop. We're going to grow this year for next year.
I don't think so.
Well, I don't think you have to approach it. I know that you said the question was for Don, Austin, but if I could interject for a moment, I don't think you have to approach it that way. I think you can approach it and say, I think part of a rebuild would probably be a change at quarterback. I think part of the equation. So you don't have to say it's a rebuilding year, but if they said we're starting Spencer or Alex Padilla this week or starting Joey Labus, call it what you want. I think a lot of fans would be okay with some growing pains from a new quarterback. Don, is that fair? Do you think fans would be okay with some growing pains there?
Sure. It would mean at least we're exploring all options.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it'll happen. I'm with Don, Austin.
I guess, do you think that he would ever announce we're making changes, there may be some growing pains, or is that something he would just do?
I don't think there's any reason to even explain it that way. Because I think people would interpret that as they wished, but as they wanted to. But I think in most cases, people would at least appreciate we're trying to find a solution. And one way to find a solution, of course, is to explore more options. And let me say this about officiating. I will admit, I was surprised myself when I saw the stats because both us and Michigan were flagged 5 times. There were only 5 official penalties on both teams. The penalty yardage was almost even. So I think it's really inappropriate to say that the officials affected the outcome of the game. I wouldn't say that about this particular game. Were there some mistakes made in officiating? Yes, but that'll happen in most games. And you have to be good enough to overcome those mistakes on the part of the officials if they happen to work against you.
Oh, actually, I did have a question. I'm not sure if you maybe covered it. We were at the game, so I didn't have the benefit of a replay. Well, I guess there was the replay on screen. Their, I believe, second touchdown pass, to me and to everyone around our section, he was like 2 yards past the line of scrimmage when he threw that. Is that something that anyone else had thought, or is that just something that the people around us thought?
You maybe had a better vantage point than I did, but I thought he was across the line of scrimmage too. And I don't know, you got to get into the replay. And as you're probably, Corey, I know you're aware, if there's any part of his body that's behind the line, then it's okay. He's legal. I don't know
even if it's his elbow, he's legal, Austin.
Oh,
so
really? Okay.
Yes, he's got to be completely past the line of scrimmage.
Okay, I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was 1 foot past, and that's that. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I appreciate the answer there. I know we're in a hurry to wrap up, so I'll let you take off then.
Appreciate it, Austin. Appreciate the call.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too. All right, folks. This has been a long show again, but appreciate everybody hanging with us. Again, if you want to sponsor this show or any of the content here from the Hawkeye of the Storm or Iowa football at the voice of college football, sponsor by emailing me from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. We'll be able to send you some more details. Also, if you would like to follow me on Twitter, the handle is @FromTheHawkeye. You can also find the Facebook page From the Hawkeye of the Storm, but I'm much more active on Twitter. Please share the show out on social media. If you're enjoying the content, others will as well. I steal that line from Mark Rogers. To become a premium subscriber, click join next to From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. And of course, hit the like button. That always helps. Please subscribe if you've not already done so. I keep mentioning donations. And again, this coming Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Time, myself and you, the caller, you, the listener, will be live for Hawkeye Hangout as we approach the Illinois game, which is a big, big game. And I believe it to be a must-win game for this Iowa Hawkeye team. And of course, next Saturday, Iowa, Illinois, from Champaign, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on BTN, a night game. And I think it's going to be another packed house. But the next thing on the docket is Iowa Live. If you've not subscribed to our sister channel, Iowa Football, at the voice of college football, we appreciate Mark Rogers helping to make this show possible, and we're simulcasting to that channel. We're live every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. We'll talk Iowa, Illinois, and recap what was another disappointing performance for this Iowa offense. Don, once again, thank you so much for all your time, and I know the callers and all the listeners appreciate it. Erica, one final super chat. Coach P, would you ever consider working for Iowa again as an OC or otherwise? Please get in there and save us. And I don't expect you to answer that question, Don, but thank you to Erica. And I think that just shows the appreciation she has for the work that you put in this show and of course, all the hours that you spent for Iowa football over the years. So thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts.
Yes, thank you, Erica. I greatly appreciate that.
All right, folks, we will be back with you on Wednesday for Hawkeye Hangout right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And, of course, we'll be live with Mark Rogers Tuesday at 4:30. Take care.